If you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge, from worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Welcome to Air Checks. Here is more of the Jean Shepherd Marathon on WOR in New York City. From September 3, 1960, the Moni sign, Shep plans to make the first purchase at the new Paperbook Gallery. 300 copies of I Libertine will be given away. Og and Charlie on the shore of Lake Titicaca, the first clam is eaten. The commercial for the Electronic Workshop, one of the sponsors, features a monaural component system for $150.
The end. Slowly but surely. Inevitably, of course, I'm going to get a letter from a friendly type who's going to say, "Dear Mr. Shepherd, will you please speak up a little louder? We're not hearing you well in Staten Island." Now look, the master plan is slowly being unfolded to me, and I figure within the next 4 or 5 weeks, I might be right down to the veritable core of it. Now, I can't explain it to you any more than just to say that. The master plan. I mean, you know, the master plan, that the Gordian knot of life, the strange, convoluted puzzle of existence, eh? The twisting, labyrinthian river of eternity. Well, it's beginning to make sense. It's beginning to slowly unfold, and not more than 15 minutes ago, I had one of those startling moments of clarity and lucidity that come to men maybe 4 or 5 times in a lifetime. Now, this problem of the moment of lucidity is one that has been bugging people for many years. Have you ever had this sensation, all kidding aside, this sensation of walking down the street? It might come any moment. It might come 5 minutes before you go to bed. You're brushing your teeth. You're mad. It might come just before you're getting ready to eat a salami sandwich or down an egg cream. And, by the way, I was in a very swank restaurant the other day. One of the kind, you know, that has the cordovan leather booths, sort of semicircular cordovan leather booths, and it has these waiters who move back and forth with black suits and black looks, carry great big maroon-colored menus with them, and sort of lurk in the darkness, and there's quiet music being played somewhere. And the guy in the next booth says, "I'll have an egg cream, please." Oh, gee. You know, in spite, I'll have an egg cream. That's like my mother came all the way out. I'll never forget the time I took her to this fancy restaurant. She came all the way out from the Midwest. Do you know what it's like in the Midwest, any of you? Have any of you ever sat down to a meal in the Midwest, in a Midwestern restaurant? Well, here I figured that she had come out of the desert. I was in the East, the effete East. The East of golden promise. What was it that Thomas Wolfe used to call Manhattan? The enfeebled rock. And I was here. I mean, we're all here. You realize how fortunate we are. We are the fortunate few. I mean, out of the billions of people who live all over the world, you realize how lucky we are. We're here. You're you. You just think who you could have been. Oh, boy, you break out in a cold sweat when you realize how lucky you are to be so, so real and right. Oh, come on, let's cut out all the fooling around. Let's admit it. Let's cut the kidding out, huh? Let's cut out all this jazz, all this editorializing, and let's admit it. Here we are, we're us, and by George, we're sure. Oh, right? And anyway, my mother, living out there in the great inverted bowl of the Midwest, was still in the center of the veritable storm eye of the desert itself, right out there in the Midwest. I guess you don't know what it's like. But sometimes out in the Midwest, night goes on for over 4 months. And all you can hear is the sound of the natives chewing. And once in a while lowing to one another as they bump on the street corners. And then they move apart and search. It's the eternal quest, of course. Oh, by the way, how are you doing in your quest? I mean, you know, the search. Well, this day came to pass when there had been an exchange of letters, and it had been decided that my mother was going to come out and visit me in the enfabled East. And there were all the preparations were made. A stock of wedgies was laid in. A stock of sequined, tinseled lady gowns were purchased and were altered to fit the particular type of tinseled lady that my mother is. All things were done so that it would be right and real. And finally she arrived. And the first day I took her to this restaurant. As a matter of fact, it happened to be an Indian restaurant. You know, well, I'm thinking, what is it that she will like more than anything else? The least like the Midwest. I took her to this Indian restaurant. Now, I don't particularly dig Indian food. On the other hand, you know, it's Indian food. There's something about Americans, by the way, that make them just insatiably curious about other people's food. Insatiably curious, and vaguely, they feel vaguely inferior to it. You know, there's hardly any place you can go in Europe where they have little American restaurants. Just a little American restaurant where you get a bad hamburger. A genuinely bad hamburger. I mean, bad in the American way. Just no, you don't find them there. There are a few places in Rome. As a matter of fact, you know, there's a rash of places opening up here and there, like, say, for example, in Brussels and Paris and in Rome, called the Californian. But they're not at all like, they're not the Californians like here. They just call them the Californian. Somehow California seems to be definitely American to the Europeans. There's no place called the Indianan or the Hoosier. Just the Californian. And you go in there, and it's strange. It's not American, and it's not Italian. It's just blah. It's not Californian, certainly. And so there is this thing in Americans who, when they feel like they really want to go out and do it, you see, really want to lay it on thick, they go to a foreign restaurant. I don't know what there is to this. Why? You always feel when you're eating this stuff that you should like it, because you're in such exotic surroundings, and it's a very special occasions, and so you eat it. And I remember this moment with my mother. And so we get to this Indian restaurant, and they had a big menu all full of curries and one thing and another. I'm sitting there. I'm the New Yorker now, you know. I would just like to know, just for purposes of my own particular statistics, how many people are living in New York? How many Manhattanites are people who have, let's say they are immigrants from Iowa or from Ohio or from Utah. Millions and millions. You have no idea what a terrible lure this place is to people who live outside of this place. And, of course, once you're here, you know, and just like all of mankind, you feel vaguely dissatisfied with it. You just have to. No matter where you are, you're going to be unhappy. It goes all the way back to original sin, so please don't ask me to discuss that this morning. Why we are unhappy. What is bugging? That goes into the next semester, and I don't think the class is ready yet. And so, so here comes my mother, loaded with original sin, out of the Middle West, you see. And I'm sitting here in the enfabled East, in the golden rock of Manhattan, loaded with original sin, both of us, you see. My mother has seniority, however, in the original sin department. I'm just a neophyte working on it. So we go to this jazzy restaurant, and of course it's one of these places with $9 cover charge and the whole bit. And the Punjabi-type waiter comes up with a turban and all, you know, what's going on. He has a long crease. You know, what is it, this long wiggly knife that they carry in their belt, and the whole business, you know. It's all, Mem Sahib. He's bowing from the waist back and forth. And you feel like any minute now the ASP is going to show up and Daddy Warbucks and someone's going to get beheaded before this is over. And so we're going through this whole business, and he finally brings us a 47-dish curry. You know, what is it, this type of curry, you know, where everything, little dishes of condiment all over, and you sprinkle egg yolks, and you sprinkle egg whites, and toasted almonds, and you sprinkle toasted coconut on things, and the steamed chicken. Oh, we're really swinging there, and all this stuff is piled up. And my mother is keeping her own counsel. She is not saying anything. She is wearing her tourist wedgies, and she is not opening her trap. And, of course, I'm saying, oh, isn't this great, Mom? Boy. Yes, please, more water. Isn't this great, Mom? Hey, how about some water here? Have you ever had 17-dish curry? You need nothing but water. You sluice it down. Hey, Ma, isn't this great? Water, please, waiter. And you're eating away there, and the lights are dim, and you can hear Indian music being played from the loudspeaker, and suddenly she says for the first time what was really on her mind. I knew something was bugging her. She says, I don't like to put on the dog. I don't like to put on the dog. I said, well, Ma, what do you mean putting on the dog? You're here. It's New York. This is Manhattan, and I'm taking you out for a good time. Now, we're not putting on the dog. Silence. She continues to shovel away at the rice. I said, but Ma, I mean, aren't you having a good time? She says, yeah. Yes, very good time. Very, very good time. And it's that kind of statement, it's the kind of look in the eye that says, yes, I am having a good time. And slowly the walls are beginning to sink down into the thick carpets, and the Punjabi waiter looks exactly like the guy I've been buying my egg creams from in this little chromium-plated joint at 7th and Broadway ever since I came to New York, you know. The same guy who sells me... And so it just not working. And I said, well, Ma, look, Mom, look, why don't you relax? And there's a long pause, and she says, why don't you? I said, but I am relaxed. I'm relaxed. Look, all those people. See, look, this is New York. This is the way people in New York live. And all the while, people from New York were coming in and out of this restaurant. And she says, they're all putting on the dog. All of them putting on the dog. And I don't like to put on the dog. And 10 minutes later, we're out in the cold, sweet air of 7th Avenue. Bitingly, that air is sweeping over us. And I had nothing more to say. I began to slowly understand that all of mankind is in one way or another putting on the dog. Do any of you happen to know the meanings, the origins of that expression? Are there any people out there who are dog putter-oners? And so I'm beginning to see, you know, as it begins to unfold, that there is a meaning to this master plan. I'm not going to be the one to put on the dog. There is a little meaning in it. And I'm getting into a cab not more than 25 minutes ago in a moment of lucidity. Real lucidity. You know that kind of lucidity that you have that lasts for about 15 seconds? Just suddenly everything is clear and brilliant. The ideas are like crystal. They're carved out of beautiful stone. And they're apparent. And then a minute later, you've forgotten what they were. And so I'm getting in the cab, and then I begin to realize that there is a master plan, that I am being contacted by the infinite. I get into a cab, a little Studebaker, a 1959 Studebaker Lark that was all battered, pushed in, bumpy, and kind of dirty, but nevertheless doubtfully struggling through life. A little yellow cab. I get in, and just as I get in, I see the name on the door of this cab company in red block letters inscribed on the yellow background. I had gotten into an aggressive cab. Believe it or not, I rode here to the station in a cab marked the Aggressive Cab Company. And as we approached the studio, it was beginning to soak in more and more and more. The aggressiveness of this cab that I was in, and the aggressiveness of the entire life that most of us are trying to lead. And I began to understand, too, that there are two types of people. There are the aggressive and the defensive. There are those who are always slowly running backwards. Always, they appear to be walking towards you. Have you ever known a guy who seems to be walking towards you, and as he walks towards you, you get the distinct impression that he's running backward as fast as he can. There are the aggressive and there are the defensive. There are those who are up on barricades, waiting to see the whites of the... Oh, here comes another one, the whites of the... Don't fire yet. Give him a chance. Let's see whether he's friend or foe.
Are you smoking more now, but enjoying it less?
Oh, there he goes.
Then you should change to camels.
Have a camel cigarette.
Yes, have a real cigarette. Have a camel.
Have a camel.
Have a real cigarette.
Have a camel cigarette.
Today, Camel is the best tasting cigarette of all. That's why you get complete satisfaction each and every time you light up. The best tobacco makes the...
No, there's just nothing I can do about it. I can't help it. I can't go away from it. I cannot retreat from it. I just cannot escape from it. I've tried to. And I can't do it. What I'm trying to say here, I guess, is, in a sense, put in another way what one of the writers of letters to me put in his letter a few days ago. He said, "You know, Shepherd," he said, "I can't help but feel that you look at life exactly the way I do, and that is, you look at it as one big circus." Now, there's nothing wrong in that. For some reason or other, I have noticed that people who cannot look at life that way vaguely suspect that there is something very deeply wrong with people who do. And they also feel that there is something not quite trustworthy about them. And they're probably right. They are probably right. I can't explain it any more than to say that there are a few people I have known. I know that this is one of my problems, that I have tried to become serious about things. Now, when I say serious, I say it in big capital letters. I have tried to become deeply serious about certain things that I have started out to do. And it has never really worked. I can't explain this, and I've tried to explain it to myself. I've tried to go down underneath the surface to find out why this is, what kind of defense mechanism this might be. I know all the psychological cliches about it, but still, and at the same time, it is an interesting phenomena. And occasionally you will see a guy who has this look in the eye of the one who, no matter what happens, can't help but see life as though he's sitting in some kind of a box seat. And he's looking out, and it's not a 3-ring circus, it's about a 10 million ring circus. And there are aerialists, there are guys being shot out of cannons, there are guys wearing clown suits, walking around with little dogs, there are chicks hanging by their teeth from long swinging silver chains from up near the top of the tent. There are guys selling popcorn. There are freaks. I mean, the whole business and the whole shooting match, as my mother would say, is a gigantic circus, and we all have a ticket to it. And we are all at one and the same time both audience and participants. Because a circus is nothing, believe me, without an audience. A show is nothing without an audience, and this is not an old actor or actress cliche. There's always some one of the things that makes me just turn inside out and turn up around the edges like old lettuce is when I hear some actor or actress being interviewed by one of the friendly, kindly, obsequious interviewers, on which certainly radio abounds. And the interviewer is always saying, "Well, Miss Stanley, we all know that you're a magnificent woman and a magnificent actress and a fantastic artist and a much finer human being than any of the rest of us. Miss Stanley, I'm so excited, Miss Stanley. Miss Stanley, could you tell us how it feels to be such fantastic, magnificent, magnanimous, fully rounded, endowed actress. I mean, how does it feel like? And then there's a pause, and she says, I first of all, I'd like to say that I do everything that I do for the wonderful audience. I can say this, that my life would be nothing without all those wonderful little people. The little people who come in from the Bronx and from Queens and from the Middle West, who come and make up that wonderful audience that every night I give my all for. I can say that my life would be nothing without the little people. And I want to thank, now that I've been given the opportunity, I would like to thank each and every one of you little people. All the little people out there to whom, well, I've dedicated my life. You have given us in the theater so much, all of you little people. Well, let me say this. If somehow you could blot out, if somehow magically you could imagine a circus, can you imagine walking into a dark, cavernous tent, a huge tent, a black tent made of strange black material, flying black flags, and there's black sawdust leading to the tent. You walk in a black night to this tent, and you notice that there are lights, beautiful colored lights, red, green, yellow, orange lights, and you hear the sound of a calliope playing. This is the calliope, you see. You hear the sound of great activity going on in this black tent. And as you walk along this black, long, twisting, black sawdust trail, you finally come to where the man is taking tickets. He looks at you with unseeing eyes. He just stands up there. Ready to go. 5 minutes, the big show is about to begin. 5 minutes about to begin. Let's go. Come one, come all. And you're the only one. And you walk past him. He doesn't even bother to sell you a ticket, nor does he bother to take a ticket. You just know that you don't have to pay, and you walk on through. And you slowly part those canvas doors, and inside is a circus. A circus, and it's in full swing. There's a beautiful girl wearing a pearl-colored bathing suit. She's swinging by her teeth from a silver trapeze. And there's a man standing up there way high atop a tightrope, and he's walking across very, very carefully, carrying a long silver balancing pole. And on each end is a small kinkajou bear, followed by a New York Times reporter. Each one, and they're all going across. And the clowns are dancing, and they're leading little dogs. People are being shot out of guns. Boom. And there's no audience. There is no audience. And somehow you know that you're not even an audience, that you are invisible and do not exist. Impossible. It can't be, you see. It's a frightening thought, isn't it? It is a frightening thought that there is a show without an audience. And so you see the ludicrousness of this. It is impossible to create same. It's just like creating an ocean without water. You cannot do it. Can you imagine an ocean or a desert without sand? Just doesn't exist. Does not. A hot day without heat? No. There is no show without those who come to see. And that's the way with this fantastic circus of life. Are you, as a performer in the circus of life, are you a tightrope walker? Yes. It's getting pretty close to home, eh, Fred? Yes. Step by step, you put your foot forward. Here's another one. And down below, the band is going... You know, a long drum roll. And the announcer has said, and now, Charlie Murchison, daredevil beyond all daredevils, will attempt the death-defying feat that he alone has been able to accomplish. He is going to live the life of Charlie Murchison, a dangerous feat beyond the comprehension of all mankind. Will you please be quiet in the audience?
Mr. Murchison's life is one of the most dangerous lives that have ever been lived on the face of this fantastic globe. And now, here he is, ladies and gentlemen, in the center ring, Charlie the Magnificent Murchison. Please be quiet and do not move while this dangerous act is being drawn to a conclusion.
As the drums start rolling and you, Charlie Murchison, slowly begin to move, one foot before the other, on the vast tightrope of life. One foot before the other, and you're carrying your back. Is this the type of performer you are? Eh? Or, on the other hand, are you this type of performer? Are you this type of performer?
And now, ladies and gentlemen, in the center ring, ladies and gentlemen, Charlie Murchison, the world-renowned clown who has entertained all the crowned heads of Europe, all the outstanding moguls of Madison Avenue, Charlie Murchison, clown extraordinary.
And then you begin to go through your act, carrying a beach ball on your nose, bouncing up and down, hoping that they'll just laugh a little bit, just a little bit, and thereby get you off the hook again. And all your clothes are raggle-taggle, and your great painted face, a big tear has been painted near your left eye. And there you go, Charlie Murchison, clown extraordinaire, out there working with the Indian clubs again. Oh, dream, eternal. What? Or are you this kind of a performer? Stop it, Jim. Stop. Ho, ho, ho. Ho, 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 ho. Out, raus mit uns. Out. Oh, yes, hold it. Maybe you're this sort of performer. There's suddenly heard throughout the big top of life the shrill, shocking note of a whistle.
Attention, please. May I have your attention, please, ladies and gentlemen? Daredevil, Cannonball McAleer, James McAleer, citizen ordinary, will now attempt the death-defying, fantastic feat of being shot out of the mouth of an 88-millimeter cannon, unaided by nets and unaccompanied by any artificial means whatsoever. Ladies and gentlemen, this particular feat has never before been attempted by any mortal human being in the gigantic circus of life. We respectfully command total silence while this death-defying feat is carried to, we hope, a successful conclusion.
And then slowly the drums begin to roll. This time in a funeral dirge. And there you come out, dressed in a black suit of tights, wearing a black football helmet and a black look. You stand there before the crowd and you bow graciously, as Boris Karloff would bow, to the left, to the right, and to those in the center, with infinite dignity and with infinite sorrow. You are about to give your all. And then several men dressed as a firing squad, dressed in ceremonial fatigues, wearing ceremonial beards, lead you to a platform that leads to the breech of your gigantic cannon from which you will be shot. With a last wave, joie de vivre, you are inserted into the breach. And the drums begin to roll faster and faster. Grump, grump. maybe this is the type of performer you are, eh? Uh-huh. In the vast circus of life. I have known several. One-shot men. And then, how about this type? Maybe you are this type. This is the type who scurries through life, scurries through life, hardly seen by the others. His voice is the only thing that is heard, and occasionally, when something is needed, he is there to provide that small service. You know, many people retreat from life by being always of service. That's all they are. They just want to be of service. Just let me help. That's all. Just don't hurt me, but let me help here. There, easy boy. Let me tie your shoes for you now. There. Let me smooth your. This is another type, scurrying through life. And you see them. You see in this vast circus of life. Actually, you don't see them because they kind of get in the way of the main view. But when you need them, they are very handy. They are wearing white hats, and they're wearing white coats, and they have big bags slung around their shoulders, or maybe a big box. And sometimes the bag contains popcorn. Other times the box contains fresh hot dogs, or maybe a small refrigerator full of beer. And this type is going around, ice cold beer here, ice cold beer, yeah, ice cold beer, ice cold, we got an ice cold. How many? 2? Hey, would you please pass this down the aisle? Come on. Ice cold beer. Always opening beer bottles, always passing ice cold beer to others, always trying to make change on the run, and always trying to keep out of the line of vision. Ice cold beer? Oh, excuse me, ma'am. I'm sorry, ma'am. Excuse me. Get out of the way, will you, for crying out loud? Get out of my way. I'm trying to see. Can't you see? Ice cold beer, ice cold. Are you this type of performer? Hey? And then there's another type, of course. There's a very definite type of performer in this vast circus of life who is not even inside the tent. You see, he's not even inside of the thing. He's standing out in front. He's wearing a checkered vest. He's wearing a derby hat. And he is shouting, 5 minutes, the big show's about to begin. 5 minutes, the big show's about to begin. Hey, everyone, come on, the big show's about to begin in 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. Let's go, in 5 minutes, the big show's about to begin. Hey. Maybe you're this type of performer. This town abounds in them. It abounds in them. Did I tell you about the guy I met a couple of weeks ago who had the Castro account? Did I tell you about the guy I met about 3 or 4 months ago who worked in an agency? Get this one and put this right on the top of your head and think about it for a moment. I will not even mention the agency, nor will I even mention the people involved. But he worked in an agency that handled the Hungarian Freedom account, believe it or not. And he told me that the day that the Hungarian Freedom Revolt came up, the reason that all the confusion resulted and ensued was that the account man on the Hungarian Freedom account was out of town on a 3-day trip to the coast, and they couldn't contact him, and they didn't know what to say to the Hungarian freedom fighters as they were being shot between the eyes. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, we had the Hungarian account, the Hungarian Freedom account. I said, you mean the Hungarian Freedom account was handled by an agency and it had an account executive who handled it? So, of course. Can't you just see the president of the country getting on the phone, calling up his agency and says, now it hit the fan. It has hit the fan. Will you please get a hold of Murchison, the Hungarian Freedom Account executive? Hurry up, for crying out loud. Either that, or the agency man is red hot calling the president, and he is saying, look, our business is public relations. How much trouble do you think we can get you out of? And so maybe you're one of those performers who is not even somehow involved in life and somehow thinks that life is one vast mercantile situation, one vast market upon which you can only capitalize if your voice is loud enough. Hurry. Maybe you're this type of performer. more and more. And then maybe you're this sort. This is another sort entirely. There's another kind. There's another type. And this type usually actually is, well, let's put it this way. Let's see this type of performer as she enters the ring. The big announcer, the tall, thin man wearing the black cutaway coat and the white high water pants, carrying the whip, wearing the long silk hat, steps to the microphone and he says, "Ladies and gentlemen, now the world-famous bareback rider, Madame Lazaza, the most beautiful world-famous bareback rider in all of circusdom, is now set to entertain us in the center ring." And then the band goes, and out comes this big, beautiful white Percheron horse with large brown liquid eyes. And there is this chick. There is this chick standing on one itsy-bitsy toe, wearing this itsy-bitsy white sequin thing, waving at all the crowd. "Hello there, hello. Hello, everybody, I'm cute. Oh, hello there. Oh, my school, I'm so cute. Oh, you're so wonderful." And the giant Percheron, who is usually a male of one kind or another, quietly galumps around the middle ring. His big brown liquid eyes. "Hello there. Oh, I'm so cute. Hello there." And the band is going. "A pretty girl is like a melody. La da 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 da. Hello there." And then finally, off the ring and out into the night goes Miss Beautiful. Now, you know this performer. Of course you do. Of course you do. Of course. And then there's another type of performer in the vast circus of life, and this is a thin, angry type wearing black horn-rimmed glasses who sits in the darkness under the stands and counts the receipts. And sits there with a comptometer machine at her side. Boing, 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 and all the while the band is playing a she hears it, she's part of it, but she never sees it at all. Boing, boing, boing. Ah, oh, vast circus of humanity. Oh, vast center ring of life. La la poo poo pee, la do 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 do, ba 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 ba. Ah, la dee dee dee, la ba ba boo, ba 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 bee ba boo boo boo. Oh, I'm always chasing rainbows. What do you mean I'm always chasing rainbows? I know what I'm after. Huh. Oh, yes. Oh, there are other performers, of course. And some of the saddest ones of all. The last clown has disappeared. The last bareback rider has gone into the shadows of the tinsel tent, the tinseled work and sleep tent. And then on the scene come these people in the rumpled clothes. On the scene come these guys who are vaguely shaggy and these women who are very lumpy, carrying pails and mops. And you see them moving around in the darkness, sweeping up. And you know what they're sweeping up? Sweeping up, hosing it down, working away out there in the darkness. Just working their lives away, sweeping up the mess that everybody else has left behind. Sweeping, grubbling. And I would venture to say that this is probably the greatest percentage of all. This is the greatest number of all the performers. The sweepers up. They're never even awake when the show is going on. They don't come to work till 3 o'clock in the morning. Philosophically speaking, the show has long since passed when they pack their simple lunches, their sad, simple peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and apples, and their 5-cent pies, their pints of half-cold instant coffee. And they pack it all into their lunchbox, and they go off to sweep up, just to sweep up. And these people begin very early in life, you know. In fact, every one of the performers begin early in life. The little one standing on her toes on top of that perch around, was doing that at the age of 2 and being encouraged. Isn't she cute? And all the while she's galloping around the center ring in the living room for whatever frustration she wants to work out. And all the while, the little kid who is 2 years old is already beginning to retreat to the spot directly behind the potted palm where he is preparing to sell his popcorn. I hope somebody needs popcorn there, or maybe a sandwich. I'll go get it for them, and they won't be mad at me then. I'll get some candy for them. I'll make things happier. And all the while, some little kid is preparing to be shot from a gun. As he does his only little thing that he can do, and that is stand on one foot on the window ledge 3 stories above the street. Hey, get him on! What's the matter with you, for crying out loud, Donald? How many times have we told you to stay off that window ledge? Donald is just preparing to stand on the window ledge all of his life. Donald is prepared to be a one-shot man. But boy, what a shot. That's all Donald is preparing for. And then, of course, as you slowly grow into your role, the externals begin to be fused one into the other until you can hardly tell the girl standing on the bareback horse from the girl down below there, who tries to look like the girl standing on the bareback horse, but who nevertheless is chained eternally to her mental comptometer machine and is eternally counting the eternal tickets, no matter how she dresses. And then, of course, there are 3 or 4 or 5 who inevitably must come out in their raggle-taggle clothes, bouncing a beach ball on their nose even at the age of 2. So come on, ahead. The big circus of our life is about to begin. The big circus of life is about to begin. The biggest circus in the history of all the world. Let's go. For just $1. You'll see the biggest circus, the biggest surprise circus, the biggest wonderful surprise circus of all. And you're a part of it, sir. Come on. One. How many did you say? One. Come on. We'll be back in just 15 minutes.
This is WOR Radio, your station for news.
What do you hear in the best of circles?
Schaefer all around.
People all have fun.
The pleasure doesn't fade.
After 1 or 2,
You get that first beer pleasure each beer through. Now that's why you hear in the best of circles.
Schaefer all around.
Schaefer invites you to watch the parade of American history at Freedomland, USA. Along with the recreations of great events of our past, Schaefer has been invited to show you as it's brewing in 1842 and as it is today. Come out and see that original Schaefer Brewery, the home site of America's oldest lager beer. And while you're there, pick up an entry blank for the Schaefer My Best Gal contest. It's exciting, easy to enter, and valuable prizes can be yours. This is WOR, AM and FM New York, owned and operated by RKO General. See the 4-star motion picture Song Without End, together with the magnificent stage show, now at Radio City Music Hall, Song Without End. At the WOR time signal, 1 o'clock.
James McCarthy reporting. For up-to-the-minute reports, stay tuned to this station. Now the news. A ragtag army made up mostly of volunteers from all walks of life began laying siege on the Congo's Kasai province in a move to liberate the valuable mining state from the Central Congo government forces and install Albert Kalonji as its provisional head just a short while ago. Kalonji is the self-styled president of the mineral-rich Kasai area who was forced to flee his government seat by forces of Congolese Premier Patrice Lumumba some time ago. At the time, Lumumba's forces invaded Kasai and took control over much of the area. Kalonji charged that the Congo Premier's troops were being led by Czechoslovakian military advisors and were using communist arms and munitions. This was later confirmed by a communist leader in Leopoldville, who told reporters that the Reds were more involved than most people thought, adding, "You don't think they, the Congolese, could do this by themselves, do you?" The volunteer force of Kalanji, estimated at anywhere from 250 to 500 men, crossed the river Labilash from another breakaway state, Katanga, and are headed for Laputa in central Kasai. Katanga's premier, Moshi Chambe, is said to have armed the Kalanji rebels and offered military advisors in the battle, but this has not been confirmed. More news in a moment.
Say, baseball fans, do you have an inquisitive youngster who has the knack of asking just the baseball question that stumps you? Or do you yourself sometimes wonder about a baseball question or two? If so, here's big news about an exciting new book. It's the Mutual Baseball Annual, and it's baseball's biggest $1 value. Edited by Van Patrick, the Mutual Baseball Annual is like 16 Major League yearbooks rolled into one. Over 200 action photos, plus biographical sketches and pictures of almost 200 stars. You get a sweeping view of the 1960 baseball season, as well as the home schedules and rosters of all teams. And an extra bonus, an all-time record section. So if you want the answers to baseball questions, get the Mutual Baseball Annual. Just send $1 to Baseball, Mutual Network, New York 18. A $2 value for only $1. Order your copy today. That's $1 to Baseball, Mutual Network, New York 18.
Well, America, it appears as though Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev will be alone in his publicity-seeking appearance at the UN General Assembly this month, as diplomatic observers claim the West's leaders have adopted a stay-away policy. The observers said the first round of consultations between President Eisenhower, French President de Gaulle, and Britain's Prime Minister Macmillan favored this policy, but they have left the door open for possible new developments and won't commit themselves to the meeting until sometime next week. The highway death toll is reaching staggering proportions today as Americans try to race the Grim Reaper on the nation's roads. Paul Jones, Information Director for the National Safety Council, gives us the details.
61 lives already have been lost on the highway in accidents since the Labor Day weekend holiday began last evening. While this is running slightly behind the Labor Day toll last year, it is catching up at such a rapid pace that every motorist should double his care and try to prevent every possible accident. The first 30 hours of the holiday period have been proved to be the most dangerous. Drive accordingly, please.
The first Russian freighter to take grain and cotton from the Black Sea to Cuba has left Odessa for Havana, where it will exchange its cargo for Castro sugar. 6 red oil tankers are also in this convoy, 2 empty, again for Castro sugar.
I can't help it. See, I'm walking along. I'm just paying attention only to my own world. I'm walking along on 16th Street the other day and just reading signs. There are those of us who read signs, and then there are those who apparently never see this world around us. One of the most significant signs here in New York is a sign that flashes M-O-N-Y. Off and on, M-O-N-Y. Do you know that I was in New York for over 3 months before I realized that that wasn't a misspelling? It's true. I had no idea what this meant, and I just thought, well, it's New York, you know. And I used to walk up and down Broadway at 2 o'clock in the morning, and that thing would go M-O-N-Y. I used to say, why doesn't somebody get that thing fixed? This is beginning to bug me. M-O-N-Y. M-O-N-Y. It would just flash, and then it would go M-O-N-Y. 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 And underneath it would say 314 315 M-O-N-Y. And then there would be a little yellow pole or something go, and there would be a green star at the top. M-O-N-Y. And I'm walking along Broadway trying to figure out why aren't they getting that thing fixed. Everybody is seeing it all over town, this misspelling. This is awful. So either you look at it or you don't. You know, I find that most people don't, and those who don't always figure that those who do are a little bit out of their minds. What's this young man speaking about? Well, I'm walking along 16th Street the other day. Madam, how do you feel this one? I'm walking along 16th Street on the west side, and I notice in through one of the doorways, you know, that there's the little ante room or the lobby into one of these office buildings where there's the automatic elevator that goes up and down, and there's this big directory hanging in there with all the little white letters, and it tells where everything is. And then there's usually 2 or 3 big signs that say barber shop to the right or coffee shop to the left, or there's an arrow that points and says telephones that way. Has it ever occurred to you that one of the major industries of New York is telephoning? Honestly, it really is. One of the major industries here in New York City is just plain telephoning. I don't mean getting anything done about it. I mean just telephoning. There's always a line of people standing in front of a telephone booth telephoning. If you could somehow get a corner on that market, if you could collect 1 cent on every one of these don't worry, somebody is. Excuse me, madam. I can't help it, you know. Don't feel sorry for the phone company. They have little itsy-bitsy pink phones now that light up in the dark. I could see Wallace Beery. He rushes into this room to make a phone call. Some disaster has happened, and he grabs a hold of this little itsy-bitsy, this little jonquil yellow phone, the one that lights up in the dark. He's trying to dial it, and his finger can't fit into the... Come on, man! Now, come on, man! What's the matter with this phone? And his finger is caught in the dial. Excuse me, madam. So I'm walking along 16th Street, and I look in there, and there's a big sign that says coffee shop, and there's another big sign that says barber shop that way. And then above it, there's a sign that says the Margaret Sanger Bureau. And there's a great big blue and white sign, and all it says is fertility, 1 flight up. Well, I saw that one, and I walked on a little ways, and then this is beginning to soak down into my consciousness. You begin to understand the nature of our fears. Who would like to shoot an arrow into the air with me? I mean, you know, not worry much about where it lands. You know, just up it goes. M-O-N-Y. 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 316. Well, I suspect, though, however, that these are the little secrets. Speaking of secrets, we have with us today the Village Voice. We've been keeping it neatly secret here for the past 16 minutes. And we have with us the Village Voice today. And in case any of you are interested, on the current issue of the Village Voice, the front page, I have a small sketch which I did of the new Village Voice office. I would like to point out that if you are visiting the village over the weekend, you know, this is the day that the big art show gets underway down there, officially that is. And right in the heart of Sheridan Square now, directly across the street, as a matter of fact, it's directly angling across the street is the Paper Book Gallery. But the Village Voice has a new office. And more than that, I'm of course, you know my involvement with the Village Voice. Did I ever tell you how this first started? This is something that might be of some interest to you, but it's a strange thing how a long involved period of your life will begin. Usually it begins quietly on cat's feet. Often you're not even aware of it. And I'll tell you, I was not aware of this when it happened. I used to do the all-night radio show here at WOR, as you know. Funny thing how I got involved in that, too. That's another story which will wait for other days of revelations to come. Revelations, of course, in capital letters, ancient carved stone letters. But I was doing this late-night radio show, and I was hot. Boy, we used to do it out at Carteret, New Jersey. And I don't know whether you've ever worked out there, Jim, but in August or in July, when the Carteret, New Jersey transmitter house has really worked itself up to a lather, about 2 o'clock in the morning, when the heat is laying over the Jersey bogs out there, it is just unbelievably hot in that building. with that 50-kilowatt transmitter going and no ventilation at all. And I used to sit out there wearing nothing but a pair of shorts and work all night, just slave all night, trying to dredge things out of my mind, trying to see what was right down there in that dark little... Have you ever read Freud's definition of the id? You know about this little thing? This beautiful definition. I remember when I first ran into it. I would suggest if you're looking up things today, I would suggest you look up Freud's original definition of id. And you will find that there are many poetic overtones to this thing, and it describes that little gray, furry creature that's within each one of us, Jim, that little gray, dark creature, which none of us really know anything about, which has no connection with logic, which has no connection with morals, which has no connection with the learned way of life, but which nevertheless lurks underneath that surface of each one of us, even you, madam. I have no idea what you're talking about. I have no little gray, furry creature living within inside of me, Mr. Shepherd. Oh, no. Well, I'm out there working late, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm dealing with this little gray, furry creature, the id, the ego, the superego, and all the rest of the layers, you know, and I'm digging and digging and digging. And out of the darkness, one late night, oh, boy, well, it must have been 4 o'clock in the morning, I got a telephone call from this guy. And all he said was, I'm Ed Fancher, and I have this little unsuccessful newspaper, and I sure would like to have a piece from you once. I'd just like to say hello, because I figure you're fighting the same fight. I don't know what it is either, but it's the fight. And so a couple of days later, we had a cucumber sandwich somewhere, and that was the beginning of all of it. And right now, the Village Voice is one of the most important new journals in America. It really does truly have an international readership and also an international reputation. It's very seriously read in many of the...
From September 4, 1960, A Ride on the Caterpillar. Being on the Art Studies mailing list. Don't vote. The Revolt of the British Bus Drivers. A Taste of Slumgullion. Getting the Itch.
Now hang on. Here we go. Are you ready? I mean, are you really ready? Are you ready to open up like a clam under the soft, warm, laving waves of spring? Under the soft singing birds of note. Now hang on, here we go. Because the floor squeaks when I walk. Just because I have trouble in the teeth. I don't want you to think that I don't know what's going on. Just because I sometimes let my shoes get untied, sonny. Oh, I don't want you to think I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. Let me tell you why a little long ago when I was a kid. The whole shooting match boils down to a mess of pottage. A mess of pottage. It was an expression my old man used to use. He used to say it's nothing but a mess of pottage. Actually, he meant porridge. Porridge. Oatmeal, cream of wheat. Lumpy cream of wheat. Cold. A mess of pottage. You know, just because I got this cherry tree. I tell you what that old lady said down at the Strawberry Festival a couple of weeks ago. She said, let me stand you up against the wall for a moment. I'd like to take a picture of you. You're the most colorful native I've seen in this town. And I'm just a tourist. And I'd like to take a picture of you back to show my daughter, Marie. She stood me up against the wall there. And after she was through taking a picture, I said to her, why'd you take my picture, lady? She says, because you got cherry cheeks. Like Santa Claus. Santa Claus. Santa Claus. All my life, you've been telling me I look like Santa. All my life, how would you like to grow up looking like Santa Claus? When I was 10 years old, I had to play Santa Claus at the church Christmas festival. Because I looked like Santa Claus. I began to hate Santa Claus. Everybody would chuckle when it's... That was the biggest joke down at the hardware store when I was 12. Where's your reindeer, Santa? How are things at the North Pole? I am not Santa Claus. I am not Santa Claus. Would you like me to tell you a story, a bedtime story, Sonny? I'll tell you a bedtime story. One time I'm walking down by the I&E railroad tracks, over past the Erie yards. I'm walking along and it's a sunny summer afternoon. One of them long June afternoons you have once in a while. It seemed to go on forever. I'm walking along, it's a beautiful day. And I come up to these two bums, these two hobos. Just a couple of bows sitting there by the side. And they're cooking up some slumgullion. I'm walking along. Just let it go in the next track, son. Just let it go in the next one. That's it, just the next one. And I'm walking along there, and I see these two bows. I guess maybe I was about 15 at the time. And I had been told, ever since I was a little kid, to watch out for hobos. To watch out for these bums. And I'm walking along kind of on the other side of the track, trying to pretend like I don't see him, when all of a sudden one of them called out, and he said, "Hey, Sonny, come here." Nothing I could do, so I went over there to see what he wanted. And the big one said to me, "Sonny, how'd you like some slum? We're just about to throw it away. Would you like some slumgullion?" Well, I was a kid, and a kid is always hungry. And it smelled awful good. And so I said, "Sure, I'd like some slumgullion, is that what it is?" And the man laughed and said, "Slumgullion. Everybody knows what slumgullion is." So I ate the slumgullion. It was cooked up in a Campbell's tomato soup can. Oh, it was good. It was awful good. It was made out of onions from the fields, hamburger, red beans, and fire, and sky, and ground. I ate that slumgullion, and I've never been the same since. I've never been the same since, Sonny. I'd come home, and my mother, you never knew your grandmother, did you? She says to me, "What's that stuff you got around your mouth there? Have you been eating? You've been spoiling your supper again?" I said, "No, Ma." She says, "I can tell you've been eating. What have you been eating?" "Slumgullion." "Slumgullion?" "Slumgullion, Ma." "Where'd you get slumgullion?" "Down by the Erie tracks." "You mean you've been eating with hobos?" "Yeah, hobos." "You have spoiled your supper, and how many times have I told you not to go down by those railroad tracks with those bums?" Oh, did I get a tannin when my father got home. When he heard about me eating slumgullion with the bums down by the tracks. But I've never been the same since. I have never tasted anything as good as that slumgullion. Ever. I have tried everything. I have tried everything. Never tasted Stew. That's all it is. It's stew. Made out of onions, hamburger, red beans, and fire, and sky. Guess you can't get that in the supermarket. The sky, I mean. Or the fire. The earth. It's just a story. Now you go on, go to bed. Don't mean nothing, son. Just remember, I'm not Santa. I'm not Santa Claus. And you get some sleep. You get some sleep. This time of the year, you know, have you ever had the itch? You know what the itch is? Oh, do I have to tell you what the itch is? I mean, you're alive just like I am. The terrible itch. I get this awful itch in the springtime and in the fall. I have drunk lonesome water. I have drunk lonesome water. But the thing that is the most pernicious, digging, driving thing, I don't know, I think it's what makes us do all of this ridiculous stuff, is the itch. You know, it has never been recorded that the carabao had the itch, or a beaver or a rattlesnake ever gets the itch. You know what I mean by the itch? It's just the itch. It's the itch to go to Mars, to think further than your mind can think. Kind of run faster than you can run. I don't know, you know. It's the itch. And it's this kind of day that does it even more than other days. It's just sitting there like a clear, beautiful piece of crystal. You want to hold it and you want to jiggle it around in your hand, and you want the light to go filtering through it and picking up all those blue and yellow highlights. It's that jiggling thing. It's that oscillating thing. You know, speaking of getting the itch, I mean, it shows everywhere, all kinds of ways. It's inescapable in so many ways. What do you think this is? Look at them. It's oh no. It's the old crowd. It's everybody again. It's everybody I've ever known again. Hey, there's Esther. Hey, Esther Jane Alberry. What's she doing beating a bass drum? There's Alex Chosway. Hey, Al. Oh, for crying out loud, there's Gasser from the 2nd platoon. Hey, Gasser. I thought you were dead. Oh, they're all here again. All of them. Every one. Look at the confetti. And look, there's Mr. Spohn, Mr. Spohn. When did he take up baton twirling? Hey, Spohn, Mr. Spohn. My high school principal. When did he take up baton twirling? He's leading the parade. We're all marching past. Wow. What an image. How would you like to have your past suddenly march? Hey, think of that. Talk about a horror mystery. Not a horror mystery, really. A terrible scene of stark, abject terror. Speaking of abject terror, this is WOR AM and FM New York. I'll be here until 1 o'clock in the morning. And among other things, we have with us the Paper Book Gallery. And they have just opened a brand new store on 6th Avenue, right at 8th Street. Well, it's about 3 doors off of 8th Street, next to the Howard Johnson. Which, you know, if you really begin to understand what the Howard Johnson is in American life, when you see it in the middle of the village, there is nothing more out of place in Greenwich Village than Howard Johnson.
It is totally, completely out of place, and it reminds you of the American Embassy in New Delhi. You know? And I have a suspicion that Howard Johnson is the tourist embassy. It's the one thing they can cling to. It gives them one feeling, one small feeling of security. Well, right next door, maybe 3 doors away, is the new paper book gallery. And one more note. If you haven't done it, do it soon, because they are not going to go much longer. This is going to be the end of it pretty soon. And it's this. If you do not have the paper book gallery catalog, put a quarter in the mail and get it off as soon as you can. Oh, by the way, when you send for this catalog, you get more than that. You get about 9 pounds of material. It comes in a great big fat envelope, and for at least 30 seconds you will feel vaguely important when you get this in the mail. And I'll talk to Marty, and we'll see if we can get it sent in a plain sealed envelope. Then you'll even feel more important. The one that says adults only, and on the top it says official business. But what this thing is really, it's 105 or 106 pages. It's a big fat catalog of all the major paper books that are being printed and that are available from all over the world today, and they're all available through the paper book galleries. It's a good reference work. It has thousands and thousands of titles. All of them are categorized under the theme of the work involved. For example, poetry, drama, etc., philosophy, phrenology, chicanery. Oh yes, they're all listed there. And you will find them listed under subject. And this thing is 106 or 108 pages, millions and millions of titles, and it's all there. And it's just for a quarter. As a matter of fact, the quarter doesn't even begin to cover the expenses involved in mailing this thing out to you. And especially if you're a student, I think you'll find this particularly valuable. And even more so if you live outside of the New York area. The Paper Book Gallery is one of the biggest mail-order paper book organizations in the world today. They mail their stuff all over the world, all the time. And as a matter of fact, their retail market, their over-the-counter market, is just a small part of their overall business. And if you don't know about the Paper Book Gallery, just drop a quarter into an envelope and send it to Paper Book Gallery, or just write Paper Book. That makes it much easier. Paper Book, Box 60. Paper Book, Box 60, New York 12, New York. And don't send it off to me, because I will merely go across the street and buy 2 cups of coffee and a piece of pie. It's Paper Book Gallery, Paper Book, Box 60, New York 12, New York. This is the address. Paper Book, Box 60, New York 12, New York. And in a couple of weeks you'll... Oh, and one more thing, too. You will be on their mailing list then. This is not a sucker list. They do not give it to anyone else, nor do... You know that one of the big businesses today, of course, is buying lists of one kind or another. You know that you are on a list that is bought and sold? Many of us are on sucker lists. And you know, they found out some interesting things about the sucker. And that is that he will bite time and again on the same thing. So this business of once burned, it just doesn't work with mankind. It might work with cats, but it just doesn't work with people. That we have all been to a war, and we are all, just as sure as I'm sitting here, before all of it is over, before the last page has been written, we will be to more. But once burned, it means nothing. Once you're burned, you just want to go back and try it again. It's the old business of the wet paint and the red button. You can't help but reach out and touch the red paint, nor can you help but touch the red button, the one that says total destruction, if only to see what it feels like. The old feeling again, of course, that it's going to be all right. You'll start all over again and start rebuilding. But if you haven't sent for this thing, drop a quarter in the envelope and just mail it to Paper Book, Box 60, New York 12, New York. The implications are onerous. And speaking of the onerous, speaking of the crowd of the onerous. Stop. Stop. Hold it now. Just put your hand on it. Put your hand on it. Look. Can you imagine a scene like this? Now, since it was late, and I presume that the chickens have chickened out by this time, and there's just us left. Hey, this is the Labor Day weekend, isn't it? You know, in radio, people who work in this strange world of television, radio, and showbiz of one kind or another, there is absolutely no differentiation made, hardly at all. I don't know one holiday from the next. Just once, I'd really like to have a Christmas off. Just once, really have a genuine holiday. Holidays are things which are almost abstractions to us in this business. It suddenly occurred to me, this is the Labor Day weekend. No wonder there's nobody out there. Our big machine here, we have one of these IBM audience counters. It's a VDOR system, and it has just registered that we have between 7 and 8 listeners tonight. Yeah. It's varying because there's one guy who is just not... He's looking for something he's not going to find, He keeps oscillating, going back and forth between that Spanish station way down at the end of the dial and me. He can't tell which is more surrealistic. But the business, of the audience. So here it is. It's the Labor Day weekend. This is Der Tag. This is the end of it all and the beginning of something else again. The beginning of another phase. And we have arrived. We are here. And it's again all in the mind. That this Sunday is no different to me than last Sunday, the one before that, the one before that. But it is in effect and in actuality different. It has to be. It is. I mean, it better be, you see. Now, are you ready? Since we've only got 7 listening tonight, everybody else is out of town. That's in capital letters. Where do they go when they're out of town? I mean, what is out of town? I've never gone out of town. What is out there? What's out there? I don't... What? Well, maybe it is oblivion out there. But why do they want to go there, then? What brings them back here, then, you see? What strange attraction does that out there have, and then alternately we have here? A great movement. But now this is the point that we'd like to make. Since the kids are gone, since obviously the chickens have chickened out, nobody else is in town except us. There is a certain type of person who will not go out of town. And here we are. I'd like to draw an image here for you that I think is the kind of image that most of us are always brushing off, and yet it's the image that creates us. Can you imagine about 3 o'clock in the morning, you're lying in bed. You're just lying there, you see, and you've slept a little bit, and then you awaken, you slept. It's a kind of just a nothing sort of night. It's not hot. It's not cold. And you're just lying there flat, you see. And just bring it in real slow. There, almost just a suggestion. No. Much lower than that. Much. No. Way down. Way down. Way down. So you can hardly hear it. Way down. Now, lower than that. Lower. Almost off. Even lower than that. Now, even lower. That's good. No, I want this for a special reason. Now, bring it up just a hair. Now, put your hand out. Hold it there. Now, I'm showing you how radio production is done. So you're lying flat out. See, you're just lying there, and the sheets are kind of clammy. That you haven't changed your sheets since Wednesday. It is now Sunday. You're lying there, looking up at the ceiling, and once in a while that beam of light crosses. A beam of light. A car is passing by. And you can hear the Venetian blinds rattling a little bit occasionally when the breeze comes in. You're lying there flat. And then something begins to gnaw away. You begin to sense that there is a sound in the air. A sound that shouldn't be there. Just a 3 o'clock in the morning sound. What is that? What is that? It must be somebody's radio. And the clock keeps ticking away. Just a steady ticking. And then the refrigerator goes on. A fan of light goes skittering across the scene, down the wall and into the rug. There goes another one chasing it. Then you drift off just a little bit. Funny dream that you can't remember, you can't see it, and it wakes you up again. And it's sound. I wonder whose radio that is. I wonder whose radio that is. And then you get up. You walk across the rug. And you stand looking sideways through the Venetian blinds. You don't have anything on. You don't want anybody to look in. The street light peers in too clearly. You look out. You look down at the parking lot across the street. It's empty. Where's this coming from? It seems to be coming from everywhere. Just everywhere. You walk away from the Venetian blind. You go into the kitchen. You drink some milk. You are now awake. You go back into the bedroom. You pry apart the blinds and look out for real this time. And you see somebody walking past. Down below on the street. And somehow you can recognize them. Even though you're 75 feet away and it's dark, you can recognize them. It's your third grade teacher, Miss Robinette. What in the world is she doing on 6th Avenue? This is insane. Hey, Miss Rob. Oh, no, it can't be. This is ridiculous. And she disappears. And another dark, shadowy figure. It's your cousin Warren. It's your cousin who was killed in the war. Oh, this is insane. This is insane. Whose radio is that? And Warren disappears around the corner. And there's another shadowy figure. You're afraid to look. But you can't help it. You gotta look. Oh, I hear him singing. It's all the past. Oh. Who is that one? It's that chick you took to the Valentine party. What was her name? Mary Jane Spafford. Mary Jane Spafford, for crying out loud. She is still 8 years old. Oh, the devil. How come I can recognize her? You stand there, and you can't leave. It stays that way. 3 o'clock in the morning. And every one of them, each one of them, everyone you've ever known, everyone in your life goes walking past, one by one, on the dark 6th Avenue of life. Oh. I wonder, when is it my turn? When is it my turn? Look at that. Oh, no, not him. Not her. Oh, hey, Wesley.
Hey, Wes, you remember? Wes, I'm sorry, Wes, for what... He's not listening. No, listen. You're not even looking up here. Hey!
From September 10, 1960, Shep describes his visit to Guantanemo Bay, Cuba. Shepherd on the Voice of America? What would the world think? Drawing objects and really seeing them. A phone call from a lovable girl and a dynamic man of action.
I believe that it was in November. The winds were rising, and out there lay Castro land, dark and mysterious. And the lights of the base were just beginning to go on, tiny pinpoints. Gitmo. I'm looking out of the window, the porthole to you. Came back and sat down on the edge of the steel bunk. In came a commander, a friend of mine, who's developed a tropical heat rash in the last couple of days. Sweat's popping out on his brow, that intense, oppressive heat of pre-hurricane, which if you've never experienced it, cannot be told. It's just like you know something's going to happen. You know it. He looks out of the porthole a little bit. Without batting an eye, he says, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I say, Brad, what do you mean? And all the while, the metal loudspeaker hanging on the bulkhead was playing rock and roll music. I love you, my teenage baby. I love you, my baby. I gave you my ring, you gave me yours. I love you, my baby. And the announcer then, at the conclusion, says, WGBY, the Gitmo radio station, the U.S. Navy station in Guantanamo Bay. We now continue the top 40 favorites for all of you seamen out there on the USS Little Rock, the USS Spring. I love you. And this loudspeaker is roaring through the ship, and the gray, lowering clouds are coming in from the east, and the dark enigma of Castro land is looking at us. And all Brad could say was 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Are you smoking more now, but enjoying it less?
Then you should change to Camels.
Best tobacco makes the best smoke.
The one, half a dozen of the other. And by George, she was right. It is 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Now, I don't know whether or not this is a particularly Midwestern expression. Has this expression ever been used here in the East? 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Do you realize the philosophy that this thing states? The implications that it has? 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It is a deep-seated understanding. It's not a belief. A deep-seated understanding that it's all the same in the end anyway. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Let me tell you, when you're sitting in a tropical bay and you can see that wind coming down from the east, Hurricane Donna is approaching, and you're looking out over that dark, glowering Castro land, that strange enigma, that enigma where the first name basis does not work. When you sit there on that steel deck and feel that breath of hot air, and then you go out at 2 o'clock in the morning and you throw a line in and you fish for barracuda, and that light touches the edge of the water, and that choppy, heavy, hard water, and you see those fish moving along down there, just moving along past the iron sides of that ship. And you play around, look a little bit, and you can see the lights out there. You begin to know what the expression means, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I noticed a very fascinating thing about the first name basis, that there are few people in the world, in fact, I don't know of any other people in the world, who are so fanatically addicted to being loved and liked as the Americans, and almost always on the most superficial of levels. because in our own family relationships, the superficiality of our involvement is almost overpowering. Millions of kids, millions of adults. It's all, in fact, almost all of our literature, almost all of our plays are about, how come nobody loves me? How come I can't make it with anybody? Why don't they love me? Why doesn't she love me? And this is what almost all of our plays are about. It's fascinating. If you've, yes, this, speaking of love, this is WOR, and Enigmas. This is WOR, AM and FM, New York. And we'll be here until 1. You know, if you are an observer of the theatrical scene, you realize that almost all of our plays in the last 4 or 5 years have somehow dealt with that issue of how come they don't love me? How come they don't love me? Why? It's a pretty fascinating thing, you see, because these little things which we pick as entertainments, the little night-by-night entertainment things, are very much indicative of the basic fears that we have, even though the writers in many cases do not sit down to write about the basic fears. Their basic fears as individuals come out on the paper. And so it's quite obvious, if you get out far away enough from the shores, that the desire to be loved, that the first name basis, is a terrible thing with Americans. It's an awful thing. And as a matter of fact, it shows up in our newspapers constantly. Khrushchev is called Khrush, or K, by most of the tabloids here in New York. Why, Mr. Nixon is invariably called Dick by newspapers who like him. Kennedy is called Jack by those who like him. Now, Ike is never anything but Ike. He's just plain old friendly golf-swinging Ike. And this is a pretty fascinating thing. I listen to radio interviews as I sit on the ship. They're constantly being piped through various canned programs from the States, and I hear serious-type interviewers who sit down and say, well, this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, we're very privileged to have Dr. Charles Watanabe with us. Mr. Watanabe, Dr. Watanabe, is the inventor of the semi-oscillating, rotating, elliptical, new method of hydronuclear submission. He's here this afternoon to talk to us about the future of mankind on the basis of the reciprocal oscillating theories of Oswald Spengler. Now, Dr. Watanabe, you don't mind if I call you Frank, do you, here on the radio? Of course, we have, just like of course not. Of course not, sir. I don't mind if you call me Frank. Well, Frank, I'd like to ask you where you got your first interest in the submission theory of the ultra-nuclear duosonics that you've written such a wonderfully entertaining book that I heard Jack Parr talk about on the Jack Parr show the other day. Frank?
Well, Charlie, I was at the University of Southern California. I had been involved in the physical ed program there, and one afternoon inadvertently I attended a physics lecture under the idea that I was attending a physical ed lecture. So for a little problem with the cataloging there, and by George, within 15 minutes I found myself interested in moments of inertia. Well, it was just a few short hops and jumps to quantum theory, and here I am now. It's one of the things, Charlie.
Well, Frank, it's a fascinating thing. Our listeners are very intrigued, as you know, by the whole business of nuclear sonics today, and we'd like to ask you a little bit about that. But first, a word from our sponsor. Then there is a 60-second pause and a lot of gabble. Then he returns. Now, Frankie, I would like to... I'm sitting out there. This guy hasn't... They don't know. They never will know. They have worlds completely apart and opposed. And yet, one is Charlie and the other's Frankie. The belief that is somehow, if you call a man by his first name, he likes you. Fidel is called Fidel by most of the newspapers. And this the Cubans cannot understand. Well, there's that dark, lowering land out there. You see that wind. And then later that night, I'm sitting in the O Club, and I'm watching a group of 8 or 9 or maybe 10 couples, people who had been in
this area, the Guantanamo Bay area, for a long time. I don't know whether you know anything about Guantanamo Bay, but this is the big naval base, the U.S. naval base in Cuba. And it's on the far eastern end of the island. You know, it's interesting. Most people think of Havana as Cuba. They just think of Havana as Cuba, and yet Cuba is a long, narrow island that's around 500 or so miles long. You know how far 500 stretches? If you were to go 500 miles from New York, where would you be? Directly down the coast. You'd be a long way from home. And way down the coast from Havana lies Guantanamo Bay. And between Guantanamo Bay and Havana, which is the area that's right up near Florida, this is the Havana area, there is almost a trackless wilderness, great rising mountains, long stretches of plantations, and finally almost nothingness all the way down in the far eastern end of the Havana, or the Cuban island. Even you can't help but think of it that way, the Cuban island. And then that island points in the general direction of Haiti, which is just a short distance from Guantanamo Bay, Port-au-Prince. And on the other end of that island is the Dominican Republic, which is the home of the Trujilloistas. And so this semicircular area down there, that strange web basket of intrigue and motion and darkness, long, lowering clouds that come whistling down. It is an excellent place to suddenly find yourself contemplating your American naval. And I don't mean that, excuse the expression, it has nothing to do with the U.S. naval forces. and although it does peripherally, I suppose. And to see them sitting, you know, here's a group of 8 or 9 or 10 officers and their wives sitting around talking. Never once do they ever mention the strange, very precarious situation of their lives at Guantanamo Bay. And for days on end, I would talk and listen to them. No one ever mentions it. No one ever mentions it. And they're planning next week's party, next week's work, everyone buries himself in work, fantastic work, struggling, up at 3 in the morning and to bed at 2 the next morning. Work. You have no idea how these people work. And it's, I suppose, the one thing that most people have chosen to forget, you know, to forget. The more you work, the more you get involved, the better off you are, I suppose. And this is really an American trait. It's a fascinating American trait. And so I in fact, took the initiative on a couple of occasions. This is now what about this? You know, sort of a shrug of the shoulders. How can you tell, you know? How about let's go down to the O Club and having a rum? I don't know. And it goes on. And all the while, behind the counters, in all the little shops and in all the clubs at Guantanamo Bay and Gitmo, are Cubans, keeping their own counsel, selling you cigars, uniforms and hair tonic, selling you drinks, selling you malted milks, smiling occasionally. And I'm riding in a car with one of them, and I say, well, what about this? He says, sir, it is not good for me to talk of this. I said, well, what do you think? What do you think? I cannot see nothing good coming from it. Well, yes, but how do your friends feel? It is not good for me to talk of this. It's just like trying to talk to some kind of a crossword puzzle with all kinds of words going all different directions of different lengths and disparate meanings. Disparate? Do you prefer that? And so, in the end, you can only look out at that long gray island and say, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. And on the way back, I'm riding along. You see, I'm just drifting along. And I just came back here by the skin of my teeth, helicoptering over from one island to the next and finally grabbing a Matt's plane and whistling in down here just around the hurricane and above it and sailing on one wing until finally here we are, back in the land where there's a sign that hangs on a parking lot at 43rd and 2nd Avenue. I saw this not more than
half hour before the show. Not responsible for anything. That's all the sign said. And I thought, by George, I am home. I am home because it's going to be a gay theatrical season. I am home because the musicals are going to be more musical than ever. The small cars are going to be bigger. I feel good about that. I read a little note in the paper on the way back. I pick up an old paper. It says, Charlie W. Bronson, head designer of the Watanabe Motor Car Company, which made quite a little splash with its new compact car last week, says we're going to be the first compact car to give people wider seat room, longer foot room, bigger headroom, and larger motor room. The first compact car to slip down the hill again. And he said it with a ring of joy in his voice, and I knew I was home again. Yes, sir, that's my baby. No, sir, I don't mean maybe. Yes, sir, that's my baby now. Oh, by the way. Oh, by the way. Da-da-dee-da-doo-doo-doo-doo. Now, look, what I'm merely saying is that it is 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Did they ever use that expression here in the East? Did they really? They did, eh? Then we're on firm, solid American grounds. You and I both understand each other, right? Right, Torino. I'll never forget the time my program was broadcast over the Voice of America. Oh, this was 7 or 8 years ago. And I was doing a program in Philadelphia. I got a call one night from a man. He said, Shepherd, I'm from the Voice of America, and we're putting on programs of unusual quality. We'd like to broadcast them around the world to let people know that we don't only have just guys that play the top 40. We don't only have guys that sit around and interview other guys, and that we'd like to put the show on. I said, fine. And so they recorded about 10 or 12 weeks of programming. And that's the last I heard of it. Until one day I got a letter from a friend of mine who was an engineer in a Voice of America transmitter somewhere in the far, far-flung East, way off someplace. Way out there, hanging on to the edge of China or someplace. India. And he said that he was sitting at the control board one day, and all of a sudden, who comes on but Shepherd? Shepherd going along there saying 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Oh, right, a Rooney. Yes, sir, that's my baby. It's going to be all right, folks. Everywhere it's going to be okay. Just don't rock the boat. And he hears this coming out of that loudspeaker, and racing above me was a man with a high-pitched voice translating. He's translating me into Urdu. Yes, sir, folks. Yes, sir, that's my baby. And then I sang, yes, sir, that's my baby. No, sir. And he goes, and it was a weird thing. He says, great Scott. And the only image that I could draw out of this was two tribal men, two ancient herders sitting in their goatskin tent somewhere up near the Afghanistani Pass, with their camels grazing quietly next to the tent on little rocks and pieces of dirt. And they're sitting there, and their ancient wheezy battery radio is picking. Yeah, it's going to be all right, folks. What did they think? Those Urdic tribesmen. It was broadcast, I understand, later in 47 languages. Out there in that dark void, which is described by many people, one of the most fascinating feelings that you get when you get away from America and see all those things. The Lebanese coast. You see Beirut. You see Damascus. You really see it, you know. You walk. Have you ever wondered what the ground feels like when you're walking along the Damascus road? Have you ever wondered how the water tastes? For example, in Crete, they have water there, just like we have. Yeah, the world is a kind of myth to many people, and to those who do the touring, it is a show. It's kind of like a big show that disappears when they come back to the States. And the voters, by and large, look upon that dark void out there as, and this is in capital letters, the rat hole. into which you pour your money. Yes, sir, that's my baby. No, sir, don't mean maybe.
When it comes to flavor, Winston has a difference. The difference is Filter Blend, and only Winston has it. Filter Blend's the reason why Winston tastes good, like a cigarette should. Yes, today's smokers know it's what's up front that counts. And up front, ahead of the filter, only Winston gives you Filter Blend. Rich, golden tobaccos, specially selected and specially processed for true, full flavor in filter smoking. Winston tastes good, like a cigarette should. Try Winston.
Good morning. Friendly natives out there. Is there anyone out there who knows or who has any idea of what the this goes back into dark long passageways in our history. You know, America has been dotted with all sorts of aphorism creators. And what generally passes for wisdom in America is merely the repetition in new forms. And when I say forms, I don't even mean they've been changed in content. I mean in new formations. The repetition of these various aphorisms. The constant plethora of books on how to live successfully. Positive thinking took my way right all the way up to the top, and I found that there are 28 flavors. There are. And, a man of hard driving energy can get to that point, that top. And, of course, the aphorisms are a substitute for really looking at the world and thinking about it. And so wisdom today has become a kind of mixing around, shifting of all these various little aphoristic, jingoistic ideas. Every day in every way I grow better and better. Well, this is obviously not true. Patently untrue. Every way and every day each of us grows older and older. And the glands grow less and less active. The muscles grow less and less ready. And every day in every way, however, on the other hand, I grow better and better. And the mind grows more and more like a concrete block in most people's cases. But nevertheless, they repeat every way, every day, I grow better and better. Until finally you get to the situation like this kid. Did you read this little news note the other day? Only in our time, believe me, I am collecting 1 million of these things, and I'm putting them in giant file cabinets, which I will bury 200 feet deep 6 minutes before I finally kick off. This is going to be my own time capsule. Has nothing to do with newsreels of Elsa Maxwell. Has nothing to do with filmed interviews of Jack Parr talking to notables. Just, kind of an attempt to preserve what it really was like. And listen to this one. This is what it really is like. Please, please. Americana music, please. This is a note from Louisville, Kentucky. A note that comes out of the dark void, the home of the land, the home of the brave, the land of the brave and the beautiful. I've often felt that there will be a day when somebody will rewrite our national anthem, the home of the board and the land of the beat. Here's a note from Louisville, Kentucky, nestling on the sylvan shores of the Ohio River. Out there in the deep inverted bowl of the Midwest, beautiful lush country strides stretching from one end of the horizon to the other, the breadbasket of our vast continent. This beautiful country. Louisville, Kentucky. A 16-year-old youth sentenced to life in prison said he turned to crime, quote, well, 'cause there was nothing interesting on the television and nothing to do. Harold Lee Howard has been in and out of jail since he was 12. He will serve at least 8 years in the state reformatory before he is eligible for parole. Howard was sentenced yesterday in criminal court after pleading guilty to armed robbery in connection with a tavern holdup. Well, 'cause there was nothing interesting on the television. Nothing to do. Oh, yes, another note. This from New York City. The Babylon of our time. The heart, the nerve center of the thinking people, right? I say yes, right. We're the thinking ones. New York. If a new teacher fails to adjust properly to the community and the school system, he can create an unfavorable public image for himself and the schools. Dr. W.W. Thyssen, professor of education at Marquette University, reports. Nothing about education. Nothing about what he says. Reminds me of the little news note that appeared in Time magazine about the guy who was teaching school up somewhere in northern Michigan Peninsula. And he had read Albert Camus' The Stranger. Do you know what Camus was saying? Do you know what he tried to say to people? And he had 5 or 6 youngsters in his class who seemed to be above average. And so he recommended that they read Camus' The Stranger. He was fired forthright and sentenced to 10 days in jail. Nothing on the television, yes. Nothing on the television, so I kind of got bored. Figured I'd go down and knock off that SO station down the corner. Have a little excitement. And then after that, I'd buy Linda Jane a malt, big boy hamburger. We'd take a ride in my 47 Ford, and we'd head for, maybe Lexington, maybe go up to Cincy. Go on Vine Street and juke it up a little bit and have a ball. Just nothing on television, of course. Nothing to do around here. Figure I'd go down and knock off the SO station. Yeah, well, of course, that teacher of mine, he's a funny guy. Got a strange kind of public image. Nothing to do on it around here, not even in good television. I have a feeling that 100 years from now, psychologists are going to call this the WPAT syndrome. In my land of elfin dreams. That's it, Jim. I am a carnivore. Speaking of carnivores, there's a fascinating new development. Of course, I've been fascinated by the growing spread of turnpikeism. To me, one of the great isms of our time is the drive, the urge to build roadways that have no beginnings, no ends, that you just go. The basic restlessness of man knows no bounds. Just go. This is turnpikeism. Giant roadways that are so high up off the ground that you can't see the land on either side of them. You know, you can ride practically from coast to coast now on turnpikes and not see a single living human being that is not wearing a Howard Johnson uniform. Just you whistle across the land because you secretly hate it in one way or another, even though you proclaim your love for it constantly. You never look at it, you know. You should never look at it. I'll never forget the looks on the faces of the natives of a little town called Highland, Indiana. You ever heard of Highland, Indiana? Highland, Indiana was a little crossroad town outside of Chicago that used to have these gigantic traffic jams every weekend. People are all there and they're buying watermelons and arguing, going into the drugstore and having a lemon Coke, and they're sweating, and they're all in the middle of Highland, Indiana, until one day it was announced in the state capitol that they were going to build a giant viaduct as part of the state highway turnpike system. And of course, up to this point, all the people in Highland, Indiana had been mad at the tourists every weekend. And all the tourists had been mad because they had to slow up in Highland, Indiana because of the stoplight there. The stoplight. The common enemy, of course, was these. And then the day came when they put the viaduct over. There hasn't been a person in Highland, Indiana for centuries since. They just stand around with their watermelons. Nothing to do but look in television.
This is WOR Radio, your station for news.
Here comes the band with a brass-buttoned, high-stepping march version of the Schaefer Beer Song.
What do you hear in the best of circles? Schaefer all around. People all have found the pleasure doesn't fade. After one or two, you get that first beer pleasure each beer through. That's why you hear in the best of circles, Schaefer all around.
Serve your band of friends first beer pleasure every beer through. Serve Schaefer all around.
This is WOR 710 and WOR FM New York, owned and operated by RKO General at the WOR time signal exactly 1 o'clock.
James McCarthy reporting. For up-to-the-minute reports, stay tuned to this station. Now, the news. Uncle Sam decided it would be better if Red Premier Khrushchev and his 135-man communist delegation intent on visiting the United Nations stay close to the UN from the time they arrive. The official word is that the Red leader cannot travel off Manhattan Island where the UN building is located. Peter Tully, press officer for our State Department, tells us of the United States decision.
The question of assuring the necessary security for Mr. Khrushchev and the Soviet delegation has, of course, been complicated by the hostile public statements of the head of the Soviet government and by the destruction of an American plane over international waters by Soviet action and the continued illegal detention of 2 American flyers. The United States government therefore requests that arrangements be made for Mr. Khrushchev to reside in the closest convenient proximity to the headquarters of the United Nations, and that his movements, other than those connected with arrival and departure, be limited to those required by his official mission, not beyond Manhattan Island.
It was also learned today that the President of the United Arab Republic, Gamal Abdel Nasser, will attend the forthcoming UN General Assembly session in New York. It has been commented that the UAR leader is coming due to outside pressure from the left. More news in a moment.
When excess stomach acid brings on painful heartburn, remember, in a way no other antacid does, Chews and Chews alone stops acid pain in the heartburn zone. It's a medical fact. Chews, the chewing gum antacid, stops acid pain in the heartburn zone. You see, other antacids quickly go into your stomach, right through the heartburn zone, higher up. But chewing Chews releases 2 proven medicines in a steady flow that effectively soothes away acid pain in the heartburn zone and goes on to neutralize excess acid in your stomach. Chews brings fast, thorough relief, as no other antacid does, and Chews is minty, refreshing, and no chalky aftertaste. So next time you suffer heartburn from too much acid, remember, Chews and Chews alone for acid pain in the heartburn zone. Try it. Chews, C-H-O-O-Z, the chewing gum antacid.
The United Nations command in the embattled Congo is breathing somewhat easier today as a result of an official decree from the Congolese military command that all native soldiers lay down their arms and end the bloody warfare in that trouble-torn nation. If obeyed, this order would end the fighting in Kasai province, which broke out again last night, and end Premier Patrice Lumumba's planned invasion of secessionist-minded Katanga. While this action was being initiated at the request of Congo President Kasavubu, Premier Lumumba once again demanded that UN Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld and his aides stop interfering with the Congo's internal affairs. He also said he still wants white UN troops to get out of the Congo. Hurricane Donna brushed past Miami area today with rains and heavy wind gusts up to 97 miles per hour. The tropical storm is now headed toward the northeast and Tampa Bay area, second most populous in Florida. Hurricane flags continue to fly along the Florida coast for more than 300 miles, and residents are warned to prepare for the deadly lady. A new communist drive has been reported in Latin America today. Informed sources claim that the Reds are making all possible plans to infiltrate and cause the downfall of the government of Salvador, a pleasant little country of coffee, lakes, volcanoes, and hardworking people. Salvador has already witnessed a number of communist-style disturbances since last month. That's the news. James McCarthy reporting.
Listen, everybody. Charlie's going to be sociable.
Now is the time to refresh without filling. So enjoy a Pepsi wherever you are. It's the light refreshment.
But, Charlie, is that being sociable?
I know, Kay. The song says it better.
I think so.
Stay young and fair and debonair. Be sociable. Have a Pepsi.
Always have enough Pepsi on hand. Get extra cartons. Get a case.
Be really sociable.
This is WOR Radio, your station for news.
Have a real cigarette. Have a Camel. Have a Camel cigarette. Have a real cigarette. Have a Camel.
This is WOR 710 and WOR FM New York, one of the stations of RKO General.
Like a man should. We're here until 1 o'clock this afternoon. Tomorrow, yesterday. Ipso facto, in hoc curricula conc, in est spittel lauc. I will award the brass figligee. Now, this made I've heard about 5 lines in my life as a kid that impressed themselves very greatly on my mind, like a waffle, just stuck right down in there. And I will award the brass figligee with bronze oak leaf palms if you can tell me who said, in est gricula conc, in est spittel lauc. This is a famous radio line. In est spittel lauc, he would say. I will award the brass figligee with bronze oak leaf. Speaking of brass figligees, very fascinating little development here in radio. There's been a lot of talk recently about radio doing this and going up and down and sideways. And a couple of years ago, of course, the transitions that have gone on have been part of the radio scene, are almost cataclysmic. It's difficult to understand. And one point that has impressed itself upon me, and that is that we have a tendency to separate people from the things they create, including radio. A large number of people will say, well, yeah, I mean, but the radio is terrible, and people, well, let me say that it's terrible because the taste of most Americans is pretty bad. This is an unfortunate fact of the matter. Movies turn out the dream world because this is what most people want. And I know the old argument says, well, yes, but you created it. No. One small group of people cannot create a whole national psychosis. Just impossible. That Hitler couldn't have been Hitler unless a large numbers of Germans secretly felt the way he said his philosophy was conceived. In other words, you just don't create a whole image like that. It has to be there in the beginning. It's another one of the great dreams that Americans seem to have, more than most people, is this, that we can separate the governments of every nation that we don't like from the people. In other words, Khrushchev doesn't really represent the people of Russia. That the communist regime there is really not the Russian people. You know, it's this great illusion that we can separate the things that have come out of the people from the people themselves. That Hitler didn't represent all the Germans, no. That Castro does not represent the Cubans. Well, this is a questionable thesis. That Ed Sullivan and Jack Parr do not represent American taste. Oh, yes, they do. Of course they do. That the people we elect president represent our taste rather than our thinking. It's a matter of taste. It's a matter of disposition.
And you can never separate what people do on a large scale from what they really secretly want. And television is the way it is because most people secretly want it this way, even though they protest loudly about it. And this is quite true of radio. And there has been an interesting little development, and that is the development of specialty programming in radio. And all sorts of advertisers are backing various programs that are considered non-commercial in the ordinary sense. Now, what is a commercial program? A commercial program is not necessarily a program that doesn't have listeners. A commercial program is considered a program that, quote, doesn't really sell goods. Well, of course, this is a questionable thesis, too. What they really mean is, quote, a program that isn't immediately bought up by sponsors. That gets quite complicated. This doublethink that goes on within the area of public or mass communications. And the thing that I would like to note here is that more and more really fine sponsors are beginning to use specialized programming in radio. Here's an example of it. When I first came to New York, there was one place that I wanted to go and did for a short time. I'll tell you this by way of a kind of confession. I am a frustrated artist. I mean, not painting type. I love to do line drawings. This happens to be my particular disposition. I've fooled with oils. But the thing I enjoy drawing. I love to draw, and I've been drawing ever since I was about 3 when I began to work on pumpkins. I was a pumpkin man all the way up through my 15th birthday. I used to occasionally draw airplanes, and once in a while ocean liners. I was great with ocean liners. I love to draw ocean liners coming directly at you. Well, when I came to New York, which was about 1954 or 55, the first thing that I did was to enroll in a couple of courses. You'll find my name in the rolls there, at the Art Students League. This is a world-famous institution, and it's on 57th Street. You've probably walked past it a million times. But there are a lot of things about the Art Students League which many people do not understand, and one of them is you can enroll any time. It's not like a regular school. This is a school for artists. You can enroll any time, you can drop any time, you can change instructors any time, and you can go as long as you like. And you can study what you like. And the history of it is interesting. It was 85 years ago that a little tightly knit group of art students formed this organization called the Arts. That's why it's called the Art Students League of New York. Back around the time when the expressionistic field of painting was beginning to flower, gigantic, great billowing smoke was rising out of Europe. The American artists formed the Art Students League, and their idea was to help each other. Their idea was to train one another, not train really, but work with one another. You know, it's a very interesting thing about drawing. I've worked with artists. The most recent artist that I have gone out with and spent some time sketching around with is Don Kingman, who's a superb watercolorist, who, by the way, has the cover on the current Reporter magazine. The Reporter, by the way, I think consistently has the best covers in America. And Don, we were talking about drawing, and it's funny, you know, when a man draws, and you watch him draw, you learn a great deal about the way his eye works and the way his brain works. It's what a man sees. This is really the essence of all drawing. It's what you see. It's not how it is that you put it down on the paper. It's what you see. If you see the essentials in a form, even though you can't draw, you will get the essence of that creature down. You know, many of the finest artists, many of the great, for example, not really caricatures, because I don't particularly fall into this area, but many of the fine sketchers that we have, the pen and ink men, often are not really good drawers. They have fantastic eyes. They can see what their world is like. They look at a chest of drawers, and they see that chest of drawers. They really see it. Most people walk through life and never really see much. That if I were to ask you to describe, now here's an example of that. Now all of you go into your office. Large numbers of you go to your office every day. Probably some of you have been going to your office for maybe 10 or 15 years. Can you describe to me the doorknob on the door to your office? Can you tell me what color it is? Can you tell me what metal it's made of? How it feels in your hand? What shape it is? Very few people really see the thing that they live with. Yeah, they couldn't come near to drawing a telephone because they hardly ever look at a telephone. They hardly ever see the curves of a phone, the block, the chunkiness, the solidity, the kind of aggressive rockiness of a telephone. If you could just draw that rock, you don't have to draw the details, the little wires and the little knobs and the little dials. It's that rockiness. Everyone would say, oh, that's a telephone right away. They'd say, what a great telephone. Because you have gotten what the telephone says, not the little business of the eyelash. That's why when most people draw people, they get all hung up with eyelashes or an ear, you see, because they never really honestly see the person. They don't see the tilt of the neck on an individual. They don't see the way the person holds his shoulder. All you'd have to do would be to just draw the line of the neck and the shoulder, and you would have a perfect picture of anyone you know. You don't have to fool with the nose and the eyes and all this. But anyway, we're getting into this business of drawing. All I can say is that one of our new sponsors is the Art Student League, and if you have a little vague interest in drawing, I think you will find this a fascinating way to spend a night or two every month. I think really it'll open your eyes to looking at the world. This is the first step at looking at the world, is to look at objects, to look at the way a chair kind of stands out and other chairs retreat. Are you aware that some chairs retreat from you? Other chairs represent humans more than any other thing I know. Some chairs crouch. Other chairs sort of lurk. And other chairs stand there very aggressively, and they just stand there. And when you're sitting on them, you're not really sitting on that chair. That chair is allowing you to rest on its knee for a bit. And there are chairs that just lay flat and just say, here I am, come and take me. This is a very fascinating thing, chairs. And if you look carefully at chairs, you can see a lot about the backsides of the people you know. And also, just to look at a glass, to look at a spoon. It's a great aesthetic thrill to suddenly discover the world of vision. And this is the thing, I think, more than anything else, that you get when you go to a really reputable, and I'm not recommending any sure course or sure track to becoming a seeing individual, but you will be surprised what you don't see. And if you would like to find out something about the Art Students League, which I don't even have to discuss their reputable standing in the field. Their address is 215 West 57. They're right near Carnegie Hall on the uptown side, 215 West 57th. And if you would like to get an illustrated 80-page booklet about the Art Students League, which is one of the really great institutions in its field, it's the largest in the world, incidentally, and one of the most respected in the world, send a note to Art Students League at WOR, New York 18, New York, at Art Students League, WOR, New York 18, New York, or you can call them at Circle. I think the best thing to do is just call them. I am not a writer myself. Call them at Circle 74510, and there's nobody going to come out and grab you off to a life class. They'll just send you the brochure and tell you when you can register and what you can take, and I think you'll find it a ball. It's Circle 74510. I'd like to say this, that my feeling, such as it is, for the world, what little I might have, and it's always a tiny bit compared to what is offered, began when I really began to look at things, and I'm saying things, because the minute you look at things, you understand more about people, because people create things in many ways in their own image. They do. A sterile chair represents in many ways the sterile outlook. A sterile glass just standing there, a nothing glass that is used by a large number of people represents a nothing attitude towards glass. It really does. And that means also, of course, towards yourself in some ways. I'll never forget when I first went to Europe, one of the intriguing things that I noticed, first of all, was the great difference in the tiny things that are found throughout Europe, the great difference from those same tiny things that we have here. For example, soap dishes look very different, believe me, in Dublin than they do here. It's a completely different concept of a soap dish. The faucets that pour hot water into the washing bowls in a Dublin hotel do not look like the faucets we have here. There's an ornateness. There is a sense of bugles blowing and trumpets going every time you turn on the hot water, because it is much more of an event there. Hot water is just accepted here, you know. It's just a thing you have, that's all. Well, a sink that's in the house that pours water is a comparatively new and interesting and very dramatic thing to the Irish. So they have dramatic faucets. Great big round gold faucets, and you turn it, water comes out, and it's an incident. Well, telephoning is another thing, too, that you find. In France now, for example, the French have very flowery telephones because the French are very formal people when they talk back and forth. And so their telephones have mother-of-pearl handles on them. Their telephones have little golden garlands all over them, and all sorts of carved wood handles and things. And talking to somebody there is much more of a formal affair. They even have formal forms of their language, you see. So it goes all the way through the telephone. Telephoning here is much more of a very official sort of thing, you see, and it's a kind of let's say, impersonal personalization. And so our telephones are called personalized because we can get them in 6 different colors. 87 billion people, of course, have the same colors, but it's called personalized. No one would think here in America of really having a truly personal telephone, like one with a pair of earplugs that plug into your ears and is made of whalebone. You know, made of whalebone with a great big pearl horn that looks into your face and has 2 eyes painted on it. Now, this would be a real phone, you know. You could sit there every day and talk to the phone god. And the phone god is the next, and by the way, is already growing as a deity in our society. There will be a phone god within the next 10 years. Well, as a matter of fact, you know that there is now a saint that controls television. You know, there will be yes. There's a saint that's in charge of television and acting and the theater. Well, there will be a saint within the next 100 years, I think, that will have something to do with telephone conversations. You know, which is a modern art form here in America. I have a feeling that you know how 100 years ago they would collect the letters of certain people like old Henry Adams and Walpole and so on were known for their great letters. Well, the men of today will be known for their great telephone conversations. Some guys pour their whole personality into that little plastic knob there that they talk into. And they have no personality outside of that. You come in and you see them, and they sit there and kind of sweat and look. But get them on the phone. You know, they just ooze through those wires. And it's their art form. Just as many artists are nothing when you see them. Many writers are terrible in person. I mean, they are immoral in a lot of ways. I mean, they're cruel, they're angry, they're selfish, measly people, but give them the paper and they suddenly become the real him, you see, which he wants to be, and he pours it all out. Art, incidentally, is largely a means of translating the human soul into forms that it doesn't take. It's largely transmuting lead into gold, or conversely, often it's making gold into lead. And so the artist, who might be a very secretive little nasty, mean person in real life, who is cruel to people, who is very dishonest, who is oftentimes a person of very, very questionable basic mores, becomes a completely reversed person on the paper. And it's always sad to a lot of people who read certain artists or who look at their paintings, who say, "Boy, I'd sure love to meet that guy. He thinks just like," and he and I, and they meet this guy. And he's sitting there and he's lashing people with whips. Well, of course, he only loves on the paper. It's like that problem that we talked about a couple of weeks ago of the East 70 liberal, who is only liberal as long as the waiter brings his stuff real quick and the bootblack cleans his shoes perfectly all the time. Then he can be liberal, you know. Speaks incessantly of it. Speaking of the incessant speak, this is WOR AM and FM. And I'll be here until 1. If you would like to call the number, it's circle 74510. Just pick up the phone and call them and say Excelsior. I would like to tell you that this booklet... No, I better not. Circle 74510. It's the Art Students League.
And you can, speaking of art forms, of course, you know that one of the major art forms of our time is the turnpike. And it's completely losing control of itself, just like we're losing the point of many things today as we get further and further. I remember reading a beautiful essay by Edmund Wilson about the whole business of sex. And Wilson, who I think is one of the most interesting and certainly one of the most perceptive and consistent social commentators in America, Wilson was remarking at great length in this particular little booklet. And incidentally, if you're interested in this book, I would like to recommend this to you. Last week, when I went to the opening of the new paper book gallery, which is on 6th Avenue, right next to the Howard Johnson's, right down to the tourist embassy, right at 6th and 8th, I went in there and I did something I've always wanted to do. I made the first purchase in the new store. And I walked around, I looked at things, and I finally selected Edmund Wilson. I had been looking for this to come out in paperback, and there it was. And so I bought it, and the title of it is A Piece of My Mind. A Piece of My Mind, Reflections at 60 by Edmund Wilson. And it is the reflections of a mature man who has read, who has seen a great deal of the world, and who now has arrived at a point where he feels he can say something about it. And one of the things he was talking about was the whole business of sex in America, particularly, which has become a kind of ritualistic business. All the plays are written about it, and the whole point of it has been lost. It has been completely lost in most of our activities in the field. And this was really driven home to me when I'm looking at a paper this morning, getting ready to go on the air. And it was it's an ad for one of the companies here in town. I don't know which one it is. It's one of the stores, which we will not mention. But it's a store that sells women's clothing. And this is an example of just exactly what Wilson was talking about. It shows a whole group of Brigitte Bardot-type line drawings, all these chicks sitting around. And they're wearing bras and slips. That's all they're wearing. And there's all kinds of these little line drawings, all these girls, their ponytails, and looking very, extremely Playboy magazine-ish. And there they are. And it's an ad for school clothing, new school clothing for girls. And the heading of the ad says, "The lovable girls get ready for school." The lovable girls, presumably, of course, there are other types, or else there wouldn't be any such statement made. The lovable girls get ready for school. And then, in the little subheading, it says, "It costs so little to be lovable." It costs so little to be lovable. And this is a fascinating thing, that we seriously believe that we can become lovable by buying the right things. And it doesn't really cost very much to be lovable. And I'm surprised now when I see this. It has dawned on me, there's been little bells ringing in my head, that this is literally quite true. Many people honestly do feel they can buy their way into being lovable or charming or honest or reliable or sober or industrious. As a matter of fact, I fully see in the future, I fully see different courses on sincerity. It really doesn't cost much to be sincere, to be honest. Take our new 13-week course, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, in honesty. You'll find that it's fun. It's really no problem at all. It costs so little to be lovable, girls. Is there a girl out there who honestly, I just want to hear one girl who is really lovable. Will a lovable girl who is getting ready for school give us a call? I'm sure that all of us, this is purely from a laboratory standpoint. This is really, honestly, just a laboratory exam. I just want a I'd like to talk to a lovable girl who is getting ready for school, who has spent very little in being lovable, but who has made judicious purchases and has been unable to, therefore, become the lovability model of all those around her. Is there a lovable girl with us this morning? Come on, now, don't be bashful. I really want to know. I would like to talk to a lovable girl. Now, come on. And while we're waiting for the call to come in, now we won't use your name. We just seriously want to know whether there's a lovable girl. I would like to recommend that if you are going to make the village scene, that you drop into the new paper book store, which is a beautiful little store, and I understand has been a raging success the first week. This is a little store that is on 6th Avenue. It represents the culmination of a lot of work and sweat and effort and dreaming on the part of Marty Geisler, the guy who is the operator, owner, and conceiver of the whole paper book gallery idea. You will find a new store right on 6th Avenue. Just go straight down 6th Avenue into the village, and at 6th and 8th Street, it is on the west side, across sort of an angle cross there from the subway station. It's a door to downtown from the Howard Johnsons there. This is the new paper book gallery, and they're open until 2 o'clock this morning. A real swinging thing. They have millions and millions of titles there. Another thing they have. They now have, in the original languages, they have paper books from over 25 countries in the original languages. If you're interested in Portuguese or Spanish or French or Italian, you'll find the original volumes, the original printing, in the original language on sale there. This is a very intriguing place to visit, and I think you'll find the paper book gallery, in a sense, has become a kind of institution in the village, much more than just a place where books are sold. Their other galleries are over on Sheridan Square at 10th Street, where 10th hits 7th Avenue South. You know this area. And then right down the street, there's one at 3rd Street. 3rd Street right back of the NYU campus. And right next to the paper book gallery, which is open, as I said, till 2, there is Yin and Yang. Now, I'm constantly getting calls from people after the show asking me to please give them the address. Well, don't call and ask me. Look it up. So it's insane calls you get. So I had a crazy thing happen about, a couple of weeks ago. I came into the station very late. I was doing some work here. And it was a wild thing. Suddenly, the phone rang in the office, and one of the girls who was working here picked up the phone, and it was about midnight or some crazy hour like that. And picked up the phone and says, "Hello?" "What?" And some woman is calling up the radio station to ask Jean Shepherd what the address of Yin and Yang is. I said to the girl, "Well, tell her to look it up in the book, for crying out loud. I'm not Yin and Yang. I may be Yin, but I have very little Yang in me." I mean, she says, well, look it up. And the woman got very angry. I wonder whether or not Jack Parr gets calls from people asking him to please tell him where I can buy bufferin. I mean, or does Gary Moore get on the phone and have to argue with people whether or not the big size of Sal Hepatic is better than the small size? I don't know what it is. Do I seem to be particularly vulnerable or what? I'm afraid so. I'm just like a human pincushion here. I would like to recommend that if you are going to make the village scene, drop into Yin and Yang. It is really a nice little restaurant, and you'll find them at 82 West 3rd Street. Now, if you don't remember where it is, look it up in the phone book. Please do not call me. 82 West 3rd Street. Yin and Yang. It's very simple. It's just get in any cab and say, "Take me to 3rd Street, 82 West." That's all there is to it. You can walk. Just go down, get off on the 6th Avenue subway, get off and walk east on 3rd Street, and you get there. That's all. Very simple. And they are open on Sunday. They have a bar there, and their food is magnificent. And one thing I would like to, again, recommend highly, even if you don't buy anything else there, just go in and have a plate of their chicken wing hors d'oeuvres. They are magnificent. Really something out of the ordinary. Just go in and have this and go. And please wear a jacket, by the way. I mean, please, just for me, No, I don't give a darn. I mean, really. Go in your sackcloth and ashes for all I care. Incidentally, Macy's, by the way, is showing a wonderful line of sackcloth and ashes sport coats. Little pockets for the ashes and made of genuine sackcloth that scratches. And they're also bringing out a wonderful line of hair shirts. As you know, we're having a little trouble with conscience and one thing and another in America, and so some of the best sportswear people in the country are taking advantage of this and giving us a chance to wear off our frustrations. And I can think of nothing better than a beautiful dark dun-colored hair shirt to wear down to the office under your regular shirt. You sit there and
A reminder of the mortality of man, the basic sinfulness of all. It costs so little to be loved. Is she there? Well, all right. We now, ladies and gentlemen, have a lovable girl on the phone. Now, I don't want any kidding around. Now, you really are lovable. Now, wait. Now, just a minute. Now, you say, who feels that you're lovable?
My 2 sons and my husband.
They feel that you're lovable.
Yes.
Well, when did you first become lovable, madam?
Oh, I think I must have been lovable for a good many years now.
A good many years.
Think I'm lovable.
You do think you're lovable.
Well, they urge me to call, so I guess it's they who think I'm lovable.
All right. When you first began to trade in lovability, did you find that you had success from the very start?
Well, I don't know. It took a number of years to build up this, the know-how to be lovable, you know.
It took a number of years to build up the know-how of lovability?
Well, yes, it did.
It's not easy, then, to be lovable.
It took Edmund Wilson 60, and I'm only half his age.
I see. Well, do you agree with this ad that says it costs so little to be lovable?
No, not really.
You don't agree with it?
No.
You mean it does cost a lot?
It's just a lark. It's, the reason that I called was,
Oh, you're really not lovable.
well, I am lovable, but I don't say that it costs little to be lovable.
Now, wait a minute. Are you chickening out, madam? Are you saying to me that you're not truly lovable? You're just playing at it?
No, I'm really lovable. I exude lovableness from the inside all the way to the outside.
I see. Well, that's very uplifting, madam. I mean, I don't mean this as a play on words. It had nothing to do with this ad we're talking about, but it's very uplifting, madam. And I find that...
Well, I am a schoolgirl, so that I felt that you would want to hear from somebody who could prove she was lovable, and I have 3 votes.
Oh, you've proved that you're lovable by having 2 children.
Yes.
I see. Well, thank you very much, ma'am.
Proof of it.
Okay, thank you, dear. Very interesting. Hey, George. All right, now I'll tell you then. As long as we've talked to a lovable girl, you heard what she had to say about lovability. I'm also intrigued by another thing. Recently, I have been noticing ads in more and more areas that say dynamic men of action really know power. Like I'm driving along the other day, and there's a great big ad for gasoline, and it shows this guy who looks kind of mad, and his eyes are sort of crinkly, and his skin is leathery, and he's wearing his shirt torn open at the neck. It wasn't unbuttoned; it was torn open. You know, this kind of a big tuft of hair coming out, and he's sitting there, and his hair is cut real short, and above him it says, "Men of action and dynamic courage know real power." Obviously, guys who are mad and have narrow eyes and tear their shirts open know all about gasoline octanes. Now, I'd like to talk to a genuine man of action, a dynamic man of action out there who knows power. Also, who knows real cigarettes because he's a man of action. You know, we have this feeling about men of action who know about cigarettes and who know the real taste of real beer, and who know the subtleties of the various gasoline octanes that are available. I have a feeling that in the end, Ed, you know, that in the end there is going to be a special gasoline for the timid. I mean, because most of the world is composed of the timid. And there's going to be a picture of this little Mr. Peepers type, and it's a shy, retiring man know the kind of gasoline that gives them the safest, most secure feeling of trailing the pack the easiest possible way. And it throws out a wonderfully comforting smoke screen behind you as you go. No one will see where you've been. Is there a man of action out there? Oh, more lovable girls? Oh, well, I don't mind talking. Excuse me. No, well, we don't have time to mess with this lovable things. And while we're trying to get through to a man of action who honestly knows. Hey, did you read that great little bit? I'm telling you, we are getting really out on a limb. We are getting to be, in a way, we're getting to be something like right out of Alice in Wonderland. Did you read about what happened in the Turnpike? This is all also, by the way, going into my own time capsule. Here's a little note. It comes from Miami. Now, there is no place that is more drive-in, motel,
turnpike-conscious state than Miami. That whole business in Florida, all the turnpikes are going everywhere now. And listen to what happened in Miami. It says, there is a new multi-million-dollar expressway providing swift north-south travel to the western end of the city. But motorists can't tell where to get off. The State Road Department explained that a shortage of aluminum tubing has delayed erection of directional signs. I can see some guy 8 miles out to sea. It's like a flywheel. You get on the turnpike. Did I ever tell you about the time I got on the turnpike once looking for Valley Forge? And I wound up a little bit west of Harrisburg. You get on this giant machine and you just keep going. You can't stop. Numbers go past and it doesn't make any difference after a while. Turnpike travel becomes a phenomenon in itself. It isn't where you're going to that counts. The reason they didn't put the directional signs up there was a Freudian thing, obviously, because the direction isn't important. The travel is the most important thing. Getting on the turnpike is more important than getting off the turnpike. Getting off the turnpike means you're out in that rotten old world out there, where people have holes in the street, and they fist fight and argue and sit in hedges and glower and smoke short, fat cigars. You want to be on this smooth concrete ribbon to paradise, wherever that is, And so the idea of putting up the directional signs only comes as an afterthought. Believe me, have you ever wondered why so many turnpikes you can't tell where you're going half the time? You whistle right back. And you whistle past at 180 miles an hour past these little itsy-bitsy signs that are set there, because going there is not really that important. It's being on the turnpike that's important. It's much more important. Why more guys talk about their vacations in terms of how far they went, how much gas mileage they got, how fast they got there, how many hours of travel. One guy did the final thing. Did you hear about the guy that spent his 2-week vacation on the turnpike here this past summer? In fact, it was this summer. It was in June or July. He got on the turnpike, I think at Willow Grove, outside of Philadelphia, and he headed his car west, and he just continued to stay on the turnpike for 2 full weeks and did not turn his ignition off once. He went something like 10,000 miles on turnpikes, just drove round and round and round. He saw more turnpike signs, more big signs that say slow up, more big signs that say 60 miles per resume speed. That's all he saw his whole 2-week vacation. And he was given coast-to-coast news notice about it. The most idiotic feat I've heard in years. He saw nothing but Howard Johnson's for 2 solid weeks. And the kids are sitting in the back and his old lady's sitting next to him. And they're all sweating out this great adventure. Boy, just see this guy, He's on that Miami turnpike, and he's doing... A drag goes past him. There goes an Alpha past him. Palm trees are whistling. It's been now 4 hours. He has left West Palm Beach, and it's been 4 hours. They should have been 20 miles past Miami already. The kid in the back seat, Daddy, stop. Ah, shut up, will you? There goes a helicopter whistling over him, and the helicopter is from the local radio station, and every once in a while it breaks in on his radio set and says, here are the traffic conditions on the Great Northwestern Eastern Southern Outbound Highway. There's a traffic jam. Traffic Circle 74, an accident at Traffic Circle 14 in Cloverleaf area. Brought to you by the International Automobile Insurance Corporation of America. Boom! We'll be back in just 5 minutes. I've just spotted another accident. We'll give you the details in 5 minutes. Guys whistling along. Now look, why didn't you tell us that back at that last Howard Johnson for crying out? Here's Charlie Brown reporting from our auto-rotating helicopter. We are now looking down on Cloverleaf 14. Oh, what madness. Oh, what madness. Whither goest thou? And then, finally, did you read this beautiful little news note that came out of Long Island? Listen to this guy. Can you please give me my American music? This is an American Odyssey.
Not only are the turnpike drivers in Miami whistling on far down into the Keys just by sheer momentum, inertia, but listen to this one. A motorist who sought to recover 50 cents in tolls that he had paid on the Hutchison River Parkway was in jail today because he had written, quote, a threatening letter to the State Highway Department. The motorist, Walter M. Weber, a 34-year-old handyman, was arrested yesterday at his home in Uniondale, Long Island. He acknowledged having written the letter because he felt impelled, quote, to fight for my rights and my money. According to the police, the letter contained a threat that Mr. Weber would steal some dynamite and blow up the Westchester County roadway unless his toll payments were returned. I'm going to blow it up. I'm going to get some dynamite and I'll blow it up. Mr. Weber said that 3 weeks ago, while taking a quiet pleasure ride with his mother and his aunt, stopped at a Parkway toll gate to ask directions. According to Mr. Weber, he gave the attendant 25 cents and received a set of confusing instructions that brought him back to the same toll booth 40 minutes later, this time from the opposite direction. He said the collector then stuck out his hand and said, "Give me more money," demanded a second toll. Judge Albert C. Moore ordered him committed to the Nassau County Jail in East Meadow in lieu of a $500 bond. I'm going to blow it up. He made the great mistake of not realizing the basic reason for turnpikes. Mr. Weber, I must tell you, you don't fit. The basic reason is not to get somewhere. Get that out of your head. It's to be on the turnpike. That's the basic reason for turnpikes. Now get it out of your head. Cut it out. Stop thinking of cars as things to take you from one place to the next. They're things to sit in. On your big old fat duff, on the big old overstuffed cushions there, and just sail. Now get it out of your head, Mr. Weber. Poor old Mr. Weber's not hearing us. He's in his cell where they don't allow radios. Blow it up. A pleasure ride with his mother and his aunt. His mother and his aunt. Ah, the dream. The American Odyssey. 60 miles. Basic limit. 28 miles to the next restaurant. Gas-filled station. Repairs handy. Singer, that's my baby. Oh, you mean there's somebody out there? We're making I'd like to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, we're doing a laboratory survey today to contact lovable people who are being made, as you know, the object of many great advertising campaigns recently. And I hope, do we have here a dynamic man who understands true power? I see. Hello, sir. You are dynamic. You are dynamic. Well, would you please speak? It's very discouraging to hear a dynamic man speak in such an almost inaudible voice. So hit it, man. Yes? You've been spending 10 cents a gallon more than your car can use? How do you mean that?
Because I have a little six-cylinder car and it's costing me 42 cents a gallon for power.
Oh, well, I see. But doesn't it give you an additional feeling of power and genuine dynamism, though, when you have that extra octane in the tank?
But that extra octane, I still can't hit more than 40.
You still can't hit more than 40, even with the extra octane, but
I must have it because I know it's there.
You must have it, but yes, I understand what you mean there. In other words, the power is there, and that's enough.
That's enough. Even though I can't use it, it's enough.
It's enough to know that. It is a comforting feeling in this day, sir, of crumbling morals and ideals. You know, you realize that President Eisenhower recently had to appoint a committee to decide what America's ideals were. You've heard about that, haven't you? Well, it sounds to me like you'd be a good man to talk to this committee because obviously you have found something that you can hold on to through the additional octane in your gasoline, right?
Right.
Do you feel that your life has taken on a new direction since you've discovered that your let's say your stream of life is directly connected with your gas tank?
Well, I feel that I'm getting somewhere. I don't know where I'm going, but I feel that with the next octave I can achieve it.
Well, thank you very much, sir, and we hope you get there. We hope you get there soon.
Right.
All right, oh, thank you, sir. That was a dynamic man who just called in to tell us his basic philosophy of life. And could you hear him out there? It was very sad to relate that this dynamic man did not hit the mic very hard, but I think that the spirit was there. Speaking of the spirit, if you would like to fly the coop, I don't know whether or not there is much coop flying done lately. In this neighborhood anyway. It has been a long time since I've really flown the coop myself. But if you feel the urge to fly the coop and really do it up brown, I would suggest that you contact your travel agent and do it via Lufthansa. In fact, they have a special flight which leaves on Wednesday called the Fly the Coop flight, in which all the windows are shrouded and every passenger is given dark glasses as he comes aboard. His name is cleverly disguised in the manifest lists, and he'll be able to make it without so much as even the breath of scandal. So I would suggest you contact your travel agent at Lufthansa and find out how you can get to Central Europe without anybody in the block being even aware that that's the saddest thing of all. Really, when you come back from some wild place and you get back and you find that nobody even knows you've been gone, nor do they care. I walked into the station today. I said, I just left Cuba 24 hours ago. And they said, oh, for crying out loud. So, it's not quite the same anymore. But yes, it is. That's the secret. So why don't you do it via Lufthansa? This is an airlines. An airline. You move through the air with the greatest of grace and speed. Like an arrow thou fliest under the sun, scuttling, scurrying over the face of this moving, sullen globe. Like an arrow, a silver dart in the air. And all this for the price of an ordinary passage. Make it Lufthansa and go right to Munich and begin to, just sit for a while, a little beer, and then head off into the Alps. Lufthansa. Now look, I know it's connected with the same problem. You gotta go. You just gotta go. In fact, man's basic restlessness has been one of the... On the other hand, you see, there are two incidental ways to look at this. It's like the way old Freddie put it. Or was it Lonnie? Yeah, I think it was Lonnie. Old Lonnie. When they put the thumb on him there in Louisville, and he was dragged kicking and screaming away, and he was incarcerated in the local jug and finally sentenced for life imprisonment. Well, I guess I did it because there wasn't nothing good on television. Wasn't really much to do around here. So, Jenny Lou and me, we just got in our 46 Hudson. That old 46 Hudson of mine, she really goes. She really barrels. Got dual cobs. We went down, we knocked over that SO station. Of course I did it because there's nothing much to do, actually. Nothing much on television.
This is WOR Radio, your station for news.
New for you, for you, for you.
The Journal American announces a dramatic $1 million expansion program for the Sunday edition.
18 new attractions for all the family, with many of your old favorites now in the Sunday Journal American for the first time.
Here is a new concept in service for newspaper readers, a new dimension never before explored by any New York newspaper.
Read a full-page family guidance forum with latest information on health, beauty, home decoration, child care, good manners, romance, social problems.
A full page of top fashion tips with photos of latest fashions.
Ba 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 boo ba. Hey, baby. It's itsy bitsy me. Ba 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 boo 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 bee. Ram ba 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 boo. La da dee. May I ask you a pertinent question that occurred to me today at the office? A pertinent hypothetical question. I am in great voice tonight, baby. You realize that if I could play something, I could be a fantastic jazz musician? Because I got all these great ideas, but I can't play nothing. Listen to that chromatic. See, I'm sitting on my duff today, trying to outlive my lunch, feeling fat and rotten. I had been out with the guy from the Cudner Agency, and we had been laughing it up and drinking it up. And it occurred to me, see, when I'm sitting here, we're over at Le Marmiton, which is, as you know, expense account heaven. Are you listening to me, Chicorino, hey? You look fantastic without your pants. That's why they invented Venetian blinds, baby. You always have the feeling that you can see through them, but you really can't, you know. I'm really belting it out here. Oh, you mean you really want to know what my pertinent hypothetical question is? I did not know that you had heard me. This is an unexpected pleasure. And I might say, considerable surprise. You know, I don't know what it is. Why I have this uncontrollable tendency to be sarcastic. Okay, here it is. I have come back from lunch. I'm sitting there. Listen, Mulligan has no ideas that I haven't had before Mulligan had them. He was just lucky enough to have an old man who bought him a baritone sax when he was 9. My old man bought me a pair of shoes with a pocket for a knife on the side. He immediately disarmed me. He says, no kid's going to carry a knife in his shoes in my family. So I went around with a clothespin in that pocket with the flap buttoned down. It looked like I had a knife. I'll never forget the time that Esther Jane finally reached over across the aisle, unbuttoned the flap, says, can I use your knife, and pulled out the clothespin. That was when I began to hate my old man. It has not stopped since. All right, so it's $20 an hour it costs. I mean, it's good for laughs. And a $20 laugh is a better laugh than a $3 laugh. Especially when you're laughing at yourself, you know. And your old man. And everybody around you. Oh, by the way, why is it that you not only put the bolt across the door with the chain, you double lock it and you put a chair up against it? What are you afraid of? Are you afraid that if somebody gets into this place, it's going to be, I mean, like Johnny bar the door? You will not... Are you... I mean, just a little suggestion. Of course, I'm getting off the subject again. Razzmatazz. toot. You see what he's searching now. That's supposed to be a great... He's not making it there. Hear him? Whenever I feel like I'm not doing it, I put this one on, and I can hear both of them fooling around, trying to, Oh, all right. You want it now, huh? My pertinent hypothetical question. Okay. See, I come back from lunch. I like endings. It just pours out there like it's on sliced peaches. Well, now here it is. I am sitting on my duff after I have had this fantastic fried sole in butter, Moliere, Rimbaud.
Well, that's it for Air Checks this week. We will have more Jean Shepherd next week. I can't always tell how long each episode is going to be, but we keep on doing this until we hit the last episode in 1977. Air Checks is normally a 3-hour podcast uploaded weekly and can be heard every Sunday on the K-Tai radio network. See you at the same time and same channel.